million individuals, and not one of those were on those posters. We all agree we want to protect those most vulnerable in our communities. We want to protect the disabled. We want to protect pregnant women. We should not be diverting resources to those who make the choice not to work. That is something we can all agree on. So I think the facts tell a much different story than the fiction that is playing out, and we would all be in a better position to shore up these programs and protect them if we could just realize that there is fundamental flaws in the arguments of my colleagues on the left. So for the next 36 hours, we will continue to point out the flaws in their arguments. It's rooted in emotion, and that gets clicks. But right now, we have 7.6 million individuals who should never be on this program. They're ineligible by their own definitions, by their own standards, or they're in this country illegally, or they make the choice not to work. For those that need it most, we are protecting and fighting for them. That is what we are doing here today. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Gentlelady yields back.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to enter into the record a document from the Congressional Budget Office that estimates the 13.7 million that are going to be kicked off of Medicaid. Since there's all these allegations that people aren't going to be kicked off, I'd like to enter this fact document into the record.
Gentlelady is without objection to order.
Mr. Chairman, could I reserve an objection? Is that, I'm just curious what that analysis is of. Is that of the actual bill before us today, or is that something else?
This is an email from the Congressional Budget Office from Sunday, May 11th at 10:34 p.m. after y'all put out your text in the dark of night.
We have a chance to review that, and then we'll accept it once we review it, unless there's an issue.
My understanding is that is not of the bill we're discussing today.
We'll make
I'll
sure
reserve
we'll
an
review it.
objection.
Mr. Chair.
We'll review and get back with you, okay? Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yep. Gentleman from South Carolina, you're recognized for 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Mr. Chair, I just have a unanimous consent to enter into the record an article dated 2 days after their letter from the New York Times that says that there are 13.7 million people, their claim is bogus. I request unanimous consent to enter that into the record.
Mr. Chair.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Point of order, say your point of order.
Because I think the math is really important. The point of order on the New York Times, the New York Times didn't say there wasn't going to be 13.7 million people losing their health care. They said in this particular bill, it is what, somebody help me here. 7.6. So I just wanted to do the math. 7.6, 8.6 plus 5 is what? Somebody help me with the math. 8.6 plus 5ve is what? 13.7 million.
Just state your point of order. I understand your point of order.
It's important for people to appreciate that if you take the two numbers.
All right. I know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other seeking recognition for? It's your time, gentleman gentleman South Carolina, you're recognized for 3. Just wanted to do your unanimous consent request. What person, gentleman from Virginia?
Seeking recognition.
Gentleman's recognized.
I yield to the gentleman from Kentucky.
All right, thank you. I just want to address some of the earlier comments, and what my colleagues on both sides of the aisle have brought up are issues with people that are struggling, and we get that, and that's who we want to protect. We have a lot of people in the audience in that situation. That's who we want to protect. So the coverage loss that was discussed come from able-bodied adults choosing not to work. When I say that, the bill says you're exempted from the work requirement if you're an Indian or an urban Indian, if you're a California Indian, if you're eligible as an Indian for the Indian Health Service, you're exempted from the work requirement. If you're a parent, guardian, or caretaker relative of a disabled individual or dependent child, this is the bill, you are exempted from the work requirement. If you are a veteran with a disability rated as total under Section 115, you are exempted from the work requirement. If you are medically frail or otherwise has special medical needs, including an individual who is blind or disabled as defined by Section 1614, with a substance use disorder, you're not subject to the work requirement. With a disabling mental disorder, you're not subject to the work requirement. With a physical, intellectual, or developmental disability that significantly impairs their ability to perform one or more activities of daily living, you're not subject to the work requirement. with a serious or complex medical condition, you're not subject to the work requirement, or subject to the approval of the secretary, any other medical condition identified by the state that is not otherwise identified under this clause. So all of the groups that I just read are exempted from the work requirement. The other are, we do have people that are not legal status on Medicaid. CBO has scored that. There's some estimate that future people will not have coverage. I think that's 200,000 because of growth that is unrealized. That's an estimate on the future, not people currently receiving benefits. And the other are recipients getting benefits who are just not eligible based on the criteria that the other side of the aisle voted on during the Affordable Care Act. So if they don't meet the criteria that they established, and the other 5 million that was brought up that's in another jurisdiction is from a program that in the IRA expanded premium tax credits that they had sunset. As they spent money on other issues, they could have extended that longer, so this wouldn't be expiring this year. But that was a decision that you make within the budget that you have. And so that was a decision made by the other side. So I just want to be clear that we are focusing on the people that, all the one list I just read, that are truly struggling, the most vulnerable, and we want Medicaid to work for them. And so the coverage losses.
All of this is the result of poll-tested language. They tested their cuts
Are not legally eligible to be on Medicaid
and found
based on the
groups
criteria that was set previous Congresses and in the
the
Affordable
public
Care
doesn't
Act,
want Medicaid
and
cut
also
for
people
the
that are not
most
here as a legal status.
and
That's
put them
the
in an
bulk of
exemption
that
list,
number.
sort of.
So
Like,
I appreciate the time, and I yield back to my friend from Virginia.
Mr. Chairman?
I yield back.
Time's expired. Well, do you have another motion of unanimous consent request? The gentleman say their unanimous consent request. Gentlelady, I'm sorry.
I'm going to offer for the record release yesterday from the Center for Children and Families from Georgetown University McCourt School of Public Policy. A researcher there that has worked for many years, Joan Alker, just says in part, work requirements are included in this bill as expected. As I've said many times, work requirements don't achieve their intended purpose, which proponents claim is to support work, but they are very successful in causing eligible people who are working or should be exempt to lose
We just
coverage.
accept it, or are we gonna read it, Mr. Chairman?
We can accept
I want
it.
to make sure that everyone gets the bottom line here. I'll say it again, but they are very successful in causing eligible people who are working or should be exempt to lose.
All right, thanks. So that's a unanimous consent request. Is there any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Seeing no other recognition for opening statements? The gentleman has a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I seek recognition to make a motion.
Gentleman's recognized.
Now that we've finally seen the bill text that Republicans have been working on in secret for weeks, it's clear that all this bill does is take away health care from millions of Americans in order to pay for giant tax breaks for billionaires and big corporations. And that's not what the American people want. Whether they're Democrats, Republicans, or independents, they've all voiced opposition to cutting, or as you said, trimming Medicaid. And
That's true.
For those reasons, I move that the committee adjourn and that we not consider these additional changes, cuts, or trim, however you rephrase it, to Medicaid. I move that the committee adjourn.
The motion to adjourn is not debatable if there's no discussion. Therefore, all those in favor say aye. All the opposed say no. No! The gentleman asked for a recorded vote, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Latta. Mr. Latta votes no. Mr. Griffith. Mr. Griffith votes no. Mr. Bilirakis. Mr. Bilirakis votes no. Mr. Hudson.
No.
Mr. Hudson votes no. Mr. Carter of Georgia.
No.
Mr. Carter of Georgia votes no. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer votes no. Mr. Dunn. Mr. Dunn votes no. Mr. Crenshaw. Mr. Crenshaw votes no. Mr. Joyce. Mr. Joyce votes no. Mr. Weber.
Right now,
Mr.
the committee
Weber
is
votes
taking a
no.
vote on whether to adjourn or
Mr.
whether to
Allen.
proceed with this
Mr. Allen votes
hearing,
no.
this markup.
Mr. Balderson.
If they adjourn,
Mr. Balderson votes no.
the markup would
Mr.
stop.
Fulcher. Mr. Fulcher votes no.
This should be a party line vote.
Mr. Pfluger.
If I recall correctly, there are 30 Republicans on
Pfluger
this
votes
committee
no.
and 24
Mrs.
Democrats.
Harshbarger. Mrs. Harshbarger votes no. Mrs. Miller Meeks. Mrs. Miller Meeks votes no. Mrs. Kamick. Mrs. Kamick votes no. Mr. Obernolte. Mr. Obernolte votes no. Mr. James. Mr. James votes no. Mr. Benz. Mr. Benz votes no. Mrs. Houchin. Mrs. Houchin votes no. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes no. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes no. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kane votes no. Mr. Rulli. Mr. Rulli votes no. Mr. Evans. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman votes no. Mrs. Fedorchak. Mrs. Fedorchak votes no. Mr. Pallone. Mr. Pallone votes aye. Ms. DeGette. Ms. DeGette votes aye. Ms. Schakowsky. Ms. Schakowsky votes aye. Ms. Matsui. Ms. Matsui votes aye. Ms. Castor. Ms. Castor votes aye. Mr. Tonko.
Aye.
Mr. Tonko votes aye. Ms. Clark. Ms. Clark votes aye. Mr. Ruiz. Mr. Ruiz votes aye. Mr. Peters. Mr. Peters votes aye. Mrs. Dingle. Mrs. Dingle votes aye. Mr. Veazey. Mr. Veazey votes aye. Ms. Kelly. Ms. Kelly votes aye. Ms. Badagan. Ms. Badagan votes aye. Mr. Soto. Mr. Soto votes aye. Ms. Schreier. Ms. Schreier votes aye. Ms. Trahan. Ms. Trahan votes aye. Ms. Fletcher. Ms. Fletcher votes aye. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes aye. Mr. Auchincloss. Mr. Auchincloss votes aye. Mr. Carter of Louisiana.
There are going to be a
Mr.
lot
Carter
of roll call
Louisiana
votes
votes
like
aye.
this
Mr.
over the
Menendez.
next many hours.
Mr. Menendez votes aye. Mr. Mullen. Mr. Mullen votes aye. Mr. Landsman. Mr. Landsman votes aye. Ms. McClellan. Ms. McClellan votes aye. Chairman Guthrie. Chairman Guthrie votes no.
Is anyone seeking recognition to answer the roll call on the Republican side? Seeing none on the Democrat side? Seeing none, the clerk will report.
Chairman Guthrie, on that vote, there were 24 ayes and 29 noes.
So the motion fails. So we will proceed to, before we do, I just want to say I was coming in the door just a little while ago and I met a young lady who's here on her birthday. And she said, you can wave your hand. You said, it's this important enough to you. You're here on your birthday, so thank you for being here. I won't say what birthday unless you want to say, because you told me, but I won't say. But anyway, thank you for being here. So we're going to do these in 4 committee prints. We learned from during the Build Back Better when we had 16 committee prints. We're only doing 4 today. And so we'll do these in 4 different sections. So the chair calls up the committee print, subtitle A, Energy, and asks the clerk to report.
Title 4, Energy and Commerce. Subtitle A, Energy.
Without objection, reading of the committee print is dispensed with, and the committee print will be open for amendment at any point so ordered. Is there discussion or amendments?
So the first thing that they're going to consider is energy. Medicaid is not up as part of this section, neither is the Affordable Care Act. It's energy policy.
When we passed the Inflation Reduction Act 3 years ago, Congress took a massive step towards lowering energy bills for American families. It was all about affordability, trying to lower prices. But if this bill passes today, we'll wipe out all of that progress by rescinding programs that are lowering energy costs and helping to build clean energy manufacturing here in America. Also, Republicans can give tax cuts to millionaires.
You're going to hear move to strike the last word a lot today. It's basically, I would like to speak. It's Congressese for I would like to speak. So it is weird that the same committee, it's weird to me anyway, that the same committee that has jurisdiction over Medicaid also has jurisdiction over electricity. But I guess they're related, right? Most of the healthcare I need requires electricity.
This bill doesn't come anywhere close to meeting that moment. It isn't real permitting reform, doesn't make us energy dominant, and it only makes things more uncertain for industry, for Americans, and for our future. So instead of making it easier to build everything, once again we are cutting off our feet in the race to energy resilience. This is the definition of picking winners and losers, and it is not the way we will receive a resilient, energy abundant future. We need to turn our attention to bipartisan solutions that are comprehensive and cover everything. This ain't it, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Anyone on the Republican seeking recognition for discussion on the bill? Anyone on the Democrat side seeking recognition to speak on the bill? Or the committee print, I should say. Committee printer. Seeing none, are there any amendments? Oh, gentlelady from Florida is recognized for. Amendment at that. Gentlelady from Florida. The clerk, do you have the amendment? Do we annotate say the amendment? Do you have the right?
Lady, please specify the amendment.
Amendment to HCon Res 14 is 62B C2.
If you can't hear what you want to be, if you can't hear the members or you can't hear me, or if the balance is wrong on the audio, please let me know.
The clerk will report.
I have chat windows open.
Offered by Ms. Castor.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes in support of her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for everyone that noticed a very quick shift away from healthcare discussion to energy, I think that's intentional. It's part of the intention of
There is a reason why they're doing healthcare last.
the details of a bill that rips
They
your
hope we're
health
not still
away
here.
late on a Sunday night on Mother's Day, rushing it to committee without any hearing. They're trying to do this really quick, and rather than in the light of day discuss Medicaid in front of everyone and healthcare, we're going to switch to energy. But the message is exactly the same. And this is going to impact everyone too, and you better hold on to your wallets because they're coming after your electric bills too to pay for a massive tax giveaway to billionaires like Elon Musk and the wealthy and the well-connected. Because let's face it, American families are being financially squeezed right now. But unfortunately, Republicans want to make it worse through higher utility bills.
Okay,
know
I have
that
the YouTube
Americans
chat
are
open.
very
I'm
concerned
working on
about
getting the
rising
Facebook chat
energy
open.
cost. But the Trump administration now is making it worse. Utility companies in at least 19 states have hiked rates as much as $40 per month just since the Trump administration began because of so much of their chaos and confusion across the agencies.
I wasn't planning on
5
doing
months
this today.
Now into this Congress, the Republicans have not brought forth a single bill to lower energy costs for hardworking American families. Instead, what they're offering today is a handout to big oil companies and polluters, and the impact will be to raise your electric bill. They also, when you dig into this bill, they're gutting clean air protections, clean water protections, all to fund their massive tax giveaway to billionaires. This is in stark contrast to what Democrats did a few years ago. We actually focused on consumers and on your bottom line. We passed energy rebates. We funded help for working class Americans to pay their heating bills, or in my neck of the woods, their AC bills. So what my amendment today says, rather than strike right at the heart of what you're doing, let's just analyze what's going on here. If you say, Mr. Chairman, that this is going to be so good for consumers, you'll pass my amendment. It will delay any provisions in this bill from taking effect until the Energy Information Administration studies the impact of the bill and the actions taken so far on the Trump administration, so that we can ensure what you say. You say, oh, this is going to lower electric bills. Nothing in here really
Okay, so if
proves
you
that.
are someplace
We're
where
all
you
very
can
skeptical because time and time again
chat,
we've
if you're on the
signed
Facebook
with big oil CEOs
or the YouTube
and
chat, if you're in the
electric
chats, can you tell me how the audio is? When
I
I'm
mean, right
talking,
now,
can you
just
hear
look at
me?
what's-
When I'm not
what's
talking,
happening.
can you hear
When
them?
we were in charge, we passed home energy rebates. The bill they have on the floor today will take away the training grants that helps make that possible back home. 49 states across the country have applied for those Department of Energy rebates that will help working class Americans save on their electric bill, but now they want to rip those away by not allowing that to happen. In Florida, my home state, we're supposed to receive, my neighbors across the state are supposed to receive about $346 million to help. Wouldn't that help a lot of people save on their electric bills, buy food and groceries, afford the rising cost of living, maybe some of the tariff-induced price increases? But no, the Trump administration, Elon Musk with that chainsaw has said, no, we're not going to let those monies flow to hardworking people. Instead, we're going to create greater chaos. Oh, Democrats also thought it was important to help with transmission across the country. Building those big transmission lines is an incredible undertaking, as Mr. Peters has pointed out. It
Matthew,
helps
how's that
lower
now?
electric bills. So you know what they do in this bill?
And thank you for
They
helping
take
me
away
dial
the
this in.
funds that would help transmission
I'm grateful,
lines,
really,
get
truly grateful.
constructed. You know why they're doing this? Is because right now the cost of cleaner, cheaper energy is very affordable. Solar, wind, battery storage, it's created a lot of jobs across the country. The big oil companies don't like it. So they're willing to say to you, you get to pay more while they get a gift and they get a pass. And this
All right,
helps
I went
them
up
in their
another couple
calculation for their
dB.
big tax giveaway.
By the time you're hearing me
billionaires.
talking, that should
So
have
you're
kicked
getting
in.
hit a couple times. You're getting hit on your health care. You're getting hit on your electric bills. When you look out across the decades ahead, if you have kids or grandkids, it's going to be a lot hotter. We could use those energy rebates for our AC bills. But this bill, moving forward, is going to cost everybody a lot.
Thanks so much,
So I'll
Matthew.
yield back, but I'm not finished discussing this because people need to know about this. You can't rush a bill like this with such a large impact through without people understanding what it means. I'll yield back.
Thanks. The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio for 5 minutes to discuss the amendment.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this amendment adds a section to the subtitle relating to the impacts on energy costs, requiring the Energy Information Administration to certify energy costs won't increase. The best way to lower energy prices is to expand use of America's abundant energy resources, gas, oil, coal, hydropower, that provide affordable, reliable power and fuels, and not limit those resources in a forced transition to expensive renewable energy as the IRA sought to do. The way to lower electricity prices is ensure more supply,
All right, Glenn,
not
I gave you
less,
another
to ensure
2
more
dB.
generating resources that stay on
Another 2
regardless of the
decibels.
weather. The savings and fees in the subtitle will increase energy, not limit
Yes, it
will
is
increase the
worthwhile to
kind of
call
energy
any
we need
member
to
of the
lower
House of
prices and
Representatives
provide
right
for our
now,
communities.
any member,
This amendment
literally
would
any member,
forestall
if they get
this
a
effort,
vote in the
and,
United
Mr.
States House of
Chairman, I would
Representatives,
urge
it is
our
worth
members to
calling them
reject
right
the
now and
amendment.
telling them that
Now
you do
yield
not
back.
want
Gentleman
them to
yields
get
back.
a
Is there
dime
further discussion of
from
the
Medicaid.
amendment? Gentlelady from New York is recognized for
Your voice will
5
be
minutes to
added
discuss
to
the
a
amendment.
Thank you. I
massive
move to strike
chorus
the last
of
word.
people
Ladies
who are calling
recognized.
in today.
And,
Today is a great day to call in.
Representative Castor's amendment, I think, is a pretty common sense proposal. It is ensuring that none of the partisan provisions being discussed today should be implemented until we can understand their impacts on monthly energy costs. Right now, everyday Americans are experiencing absolute explosions
Hey,
in their
Angel,
monthly energy
they
bills,
did opening
particularly
statements,
under
3
the Trump
minutes
administration.
a
In
person.
fact, residents in New York
And
City
now they're
have
going to do,
their electrical bills that are
there are
spiking
4
to over
sections to the bill today that
$500
they're
a month
considering.
for a
1, 2, 3, or 4
one-bedroom
are A, B, C, and
apartment
D.
just from this
Medicaid
January
is Section
to
D.
February.
They're going to do Medicaid
And
last,
for some of
healthcare
the folks
last,
saying
because they
that,
want us to not be
you know,
paying attention. They
by
don't want
quote
people
unquote
awake when they're doing
unleashing
it.
gas,
And they don't
we
want the
can lower
disabled
these
people who
costs.
are in the
This
hearing
bill
room
that we are
to still
marking
be
up
there.
today
They're
would
trying to
actually
do this in the dead of
increase
night.
gas
So right now they're talking about
exports
energy
by
policy, and
fast-tracking the
it's weird
permitting
that
of
the
new
same
gas
committee, at least in my opinion, it's weird that
And
the same
for
committee
folks who
that
make
does
this kind
healthcare
of energy
also
independence
does
argument that
permitting
we
for
need
energy
to
projects.
drill oil and gas
But
so that
it's
we're
the way the
using
House works.
American oil and gas. American oil and gas isn't going to American
I wasn't planning on
households
doing
with
this.
some
I
of these
thought I was going to
provisions.
be
In fact,
have other
electricity markets
responsibilities
across
today
the
on the
U.S.,
Hill, but
while they
at the last
remain
minute this freed up,
heavily
so
reliant
I will
on
be here.
gas, fast-tracking these exports means that there's going to be
Subject to
less
this
gas
meat suit
available for
cooperating.
Americans because we're shipping it abroad.
This
And
is
when
also
global
being
prices
live
rise,
streamed on the
domestic gas
Facebook
suppliers are either
page for
priced
the
out or
lobbyists.
forced to pay the higher international market rates. And so what the amendment that we have before us is merely asking us to conduct a study on how the bill will impact monthly energy costs. If the Republican claim is that it's going to lower monthly energy costs, wouldn't we want to know that? And I suspect that this study would show that energy costs would actually spike under this Republican proposal. And perhaps that's the source of some of the opposition and heartburn around finding out what impact this is going to have on people. And with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. Is there any recognition on the Republican side to speak any further?
That dropped out. That was my bad. Give me a second. Give me 1 second.
this will really tell you where
should be back.
priorities differ. Contrast that with what Elon Musk has done to take a chainsaw to firing the entire staff of the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, which helps almost 6 million
Yes, that's right,
households
Matthew.
in America
I was trying to
warm
put some
and cool their
text on
homes. That's
screen
separate
that will
even
say
from
we're
the-
not currently
the
doing
energy
Medicaid,
rebates
and
I
I
was
hit the wrong
talking
key
about.
combo. It's a bad
My
hand
neighbors in
day.
Florida will lose over $100
We should have
million
video.
this
We should
year
have audio back.
because of that.
And
At a
I will
time
try
we're
again with
paying
some
more
text.
on our electric bills because utilities they get to add on when we have hurricanes and storms. So we're already facing higher costs because of damage from Hurricanes Helene and Milton, and now this. Just yesterday, the Trump administration proposed to illegally ignore Congress and court rulings by revoking energy and water efficiency standards for more than a dozen appliances. This would take the United States back to decades-old standards or eliminate them entirely, drastically costing consumers and businesses. And as we sit here, the Ways and Means Committee is marking up a bill that will make life harder for millions of American families that are simply trying to make their homes more efficient. They might be trying to install solar or batteries. And remember, this is the difference in priorities. They do that to give a massive tax cut to the wealthy and the well-connected, while you pay more. I also want to echo a point that Ranking Member Pallone made. All Congress, Republicans have held hearings where we've heard from people in the electric industry, grid operators, utility leaders. They all said that repealing a lot of these tax incentives for cleaner, cheaper energy would be catastrophic. Take one tiny little example. Republicans want to make it easier to send natural gas overseas while making all other sources of energy, be it wind, solar, batteries, or even nuclear energy, more expensive. Well, sending all natural gas overseas, as Representative Ocasio-Cortez pointed out, will increase prices here in America. But we won't have any alternative then if they send gas overseas to fuel our electric system, because they will have gutted every other option, causing power bills to explode. When you have less energy coming onto the grid, your energy prices go up. That's not fair. So just imagine that story 340 million times more as costs explode for everyone across the country. That's what this bill does. It doesn't do anything to lower your electric bill. If we're serious about addressing this problem, that at the very least, adopt my amendment, show your math. No one has to call each other, you're misleading, you're not. Just agree to do the analysis so the people can understand what's happening to their electric bills and why. I urge support of my amendment and yield back.
I yield back, Mr.
Gentlelady from New York yields back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Gentleman from Georgia, what purpose you seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how it is, if we talk about different states. My state of Georgia has been named 12 years in a row as the best state in the country to do business in, or to relocate your business, and it's growing very rapidly.
At the same time that this
just
markup
doing a
meeting is
little
happening,
research,
House Ways and Means is also meeting.
New York is paying about 26.2 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. It's 59% higher than the national average. In my home state of Georgia, is somewhere between 8 and 10 cents, depending on the demand. In Georgia, in 2022 and 23, gasoline was fluctuating somewhat, but many times it got as high as $4 a gallon. Today, I just looked it up, it's $2.88 a gallon. And that's in
I'm going
less
to keep
than
this live stream
like
going
90 days.
for as long as Facebook and
And
YouTube
I
will
will
let me.
say
If I
that
have to
we
restart
have,
it, I will.
I mean, that's, under the new guidelines that many of these we're codifying into law in this energy policy. We passed
I am not.
in the last Congress, House Bill 1, which was an all-out energy solution, all energy. I have
The
the
top line
largest
takeaway
clean
for
energy
their debate
facility,
of subtitle
in the
A on
country,
energy policy
district,
is
Went
House
Vogel.
Republicans have
Even with the
put
substantial
forward a
capital
proposal.
cost of that,
You
we're
can read
still
the
at 8 to
legislative
10 cents
text that
kilowatt hour.
undoes
So
existing
I don't know
law,
where these
the
numbers are
Inflation
coming from,
Reduction
but I can
Act,
tell
which
you
actually
costs
did
are
a lot
decreasing
on
rapidly,
energy policy
because you cannot
with the
reduce
aim of
costs
making
if
energy
you don't
more
have competition.
affordable
It will not
and
work.
sustainable.
You
So
can't regulate it.
that's the
You can't-
legislation that does things like
it just
gives
does not work
tax credits
economically. And what
for
we're
solar
seeing
panels
is a large
and battery
supply
backup systems, which
meeting
are,
demand.
of course,
If demand
if you
exceeds
are
supply, the
reliant
cost is
on
going up.
energy
That is exactly what we're
powering
trying to do in
medical
this
equipment in
legislation.
your
I yield
home,
back.
a
Gentleman
ventilator, a
yields back. Is there
CPAP
further
machine,
discussion?
a
Gentleman from Florida,
medication
what purpose you
fridge
see
that
recognized? Oh, you recognize
cannot
to speak on the amendment.
Yes,
get
thank
out of
you,
range.
Mr. Chairman.
Energy
I
is
support
incredibly
this
important,
amendment
obviously.
and oppose the job-killing, energy cost-raising provisions in the underlying reconciliation bill. We see first an attempt in this section to defund the advanced technology vehicle manufacturing provisions in 50142. You know, Florida now has the second most electric vehicles in the nation. And according to CNBC, in 2024, 20% of all new car sales were electric vehicles and hybrids. That's a giant figure. And it reminds us that slowly but surely, or maybe faster than folks even realize, that American consumers are switching over to hybrids and electrics in an increasing rate. And by the way, this advanced technology vehicle manufacturing credit has been a boom for the South. South Carolina, Volkswagen's making electric vehicles. AESC, battery manufacturing in South Carolina. BMW, EV and battery module manufacturing. Redwood Materials, battery recycling. In Georgia, Hyundai, May 2022. Hyundai reveals plan for a $5.54 billion facility dedicated to electric vehicles and battery manufacturing plants. Will create 8,100 jobs. North Carolina, Toyota, an electric vehicle plant. Toyota's investing $3.79 billion to establish a battery factory in North Carolina. All these things happened after the Inflation Reduction Act was passed and is helping to make sure that we remain competitive. We want to avoid China dumping cheap EVs on our market. We ban them from coming in, and we boost our domestic manufacturing, and these provisions help with that. And I do want to mention, you know, gas is down a little bit because President Trump tanked the economy. That's why demand is down. So if that's the plan, tank the economy so that gas is cheaper, that's a pretty extreme measure there. This is a bad deal for the South, whether it's consumers in Florida or whether it's all these high-paying jobs going to all these southern states. This is a job killer. In addition, adding in defunding of interstate transmission lines. Gosh, I've heard from both sides of the aisle how often this is critical. So some states can focus more on energy production, whether it's nuclear, whether it's natural gas, whether it's renewables, and make sure that that energy could be more efficiently spread across the United States. So why in the world would you defund the interstate transmission lines? That makes no sense. That will raise energy prices. It'll prevent efficiencies in the market and for different states to specialize in new types of energy, whether it is modular nuclear, whether it's renewable, like solar or green hydrogen that's being formulated in Florida, and then add in the cuts to energy efficient appliances. And I was born in the late 70s. This program has been around since I was a little kid. Why we would have some of these efforts to encourage people to continue to buy energy efficient appliances, the manufacturers like it, the retailers like it, and most importantly, American families like it. And you don't have to buy it. This is just an incentive for folks if they want to use energy efficient appliances, want to do their part, household by household. This is about the freedom to be able to use less energy and to be able to be more efficient and protect our environment. And so cutting these popular provisions are unpopular, job killing, and of course, are going to raise energy costs. And I yield back, Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Is there discussion of the amendment on the Republican side? Seeing none, is there discussion of the amendment on the Democrat side? Seeing no further discussion, the vote occurs on the amendment. Gentleman has asked for a roll call vote, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Latta.
No.
Mr. Latta votes no.
Yeah, Angel.
Mr. Griffith. Mr. Griffith votes no.
It's a
Mr.
great time to
Bilirakis.
call and just say
Mr. Bilirakis
thank you
votes
for
no.
everything you're doing for healthcare. Keep
Mr.
it up.
Hudson.
Fight as hard as you can.
Mr. Hudson votes no.
It would be
Mr.
good
Carter
to
of Georgia.
call in the next hour or so.
Mr. Palmer. Mr. Dunn. Mr. Dunn votes no. Mr. Crenshaw. Mr. Crenshaw votes no. Mr. Joyce. Mr. Joyce votes no. Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber votes no. Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen votes no. Mr. Balderson. Mr. Balderson votes no. Mr. Fulcher. Mr. Fulcher votes no. Mr. Pfluger. Mr.
Obviously,
Pfluger
the way
votes
that they
no.
do votes here,
Mrs. Harshbarger.
roll call votes, sort of
Mrs. Harshbarger votes
inefficient,
no.
but it is what
Mrs.
it
Miller
is.
Meeks. Mrs. Miller Meeks votes no. Mrs. Kamick. Mrs. Kamick votes no. Mr. Obernolte. Mr. Obernolte votes no. Mr. James. Mr. James votes no. Mr. Benz. Mr. Benz votes no. Mrs. Houchin. Mrs. Houchin votes no. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes no. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes no. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kane votes no. Mr. Ruley. Mr. Ruley votes no. Mr. Evans. Mr. Evans votes no. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman votes no. Mrs. Fedorchak. Mrs. Fedorchak votes no. Mr. Pallone. Mr. Pallone votes aye. Ms. DeGette. Ms. DeGette votes aye. Ms. Schakowsky. Ms. Schakowsky votes aye. Ms. Matsui. Ms. Matsui votes aye. Ms. Castor. Ms. Castor votes aye. Mr. Tonko.
Aye.
Mr. Tonko votes aye. Ms. Clark. Ms. Clark votes aye. Mr. Ruiz.
You can probably imagine where
Mr.
a
Ruiz
scenario
votes
where they all
aye.
have a little
Mr. Peters.
yes or no or absent
Mr. Peters
in front of
votes
them
aye.
that they can touch,
Mrs. Dingle.
and it automatically
Mrs. Dingle votes aye.
tallies votes
Mr. Veazey.
electronically. But
Mr. Veazey votes aye. Ms. Kelly.
a lot of
Ms. Kelly votes
what
aye.
Congress does is
Ms.
inefficient
Badagan?
by design.
Ms. Badagan votes aye. Mr. Soto. Mr. Soto votes aye. Ms. Schreier. Ms. Schreier votes aye. Ms. Trahan. Ms. Trahan votes aye. Ms. Fletcher. Ms. Fletcher votes aye. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes aye. Mr. Auchincloss. Mr. Auchincloss votes aye. Mr. Carter of Louisiana. Mr. Carter of Louisiana votes aye. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Menendez votes aye. Mr. Mullen. Mr. Mullen votes aye. Mr. Landsman. Mr. Landsman votes aye. Ms. McClellan. Ms. McClellan votes aye.
The language we
Chairman Guthrie.
use,
Chairman Guthrie votes no.
really important.
Mr. Carter of Georgia is not recorded. Mr. Carter votes no. Mr. Palmer is not recorded. Mr. Palmer votes no.
Seeing none, the clerk will report.
Chairman Guthrie, on that vote, there were 24 ayes and 30 noes.
The amendment is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? Gentlelady from New York?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk labeled 97AU7.
And if I can reserve a point of order, Mr. Chair?
Point of order has been reserved. The clerk, do you have the amendment? The clerk,
Yes, it's at
Mr.
the
Chairman,
desk.
could the gentlelady please repeat the amendment?
Sure, it's 97AU7.
Amendment offered by Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, page 29, beginning on line 6, strike paragraph 1. Add at the end the following.
without
Section
objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentlelady from New York is recognized for 5 minutes in support of her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an amendment that I hope we can all be able to support today in terms of it, at its core, being an anti-corruption amendment. In my time here in Congress, I have participated in investigations of large corporations that have poisoned communities across the country, whether it was Deloitte and 3M that dumped PFAS in communities where so many women and families dealt with reproductive cancers, whether it was other kinds of pipelines near and sited near populated communities that then leaked toxic chemicals into water supplies. And even in Flint, Michigan, where we saw so many children that experienced developmental delays due to exposure to lead. A lot of times, these communities were poisoned due to large corporations that were exploiting corrupt loopholes in the law in order to poison the most vulnerable communities in America. And I deeply fear that there is a loophole and similar provision in this bill. This bill allows gas companies to pay $1 million in order for their project to bypass the traditional permitting process to be just simply deemed in the public interest. In fact, this bill also allows natural gas pipeline projects to pay a fee of $10 million to cut the line and also bypass the normal permitting process. Now, I think that it's a bipartisan priority for both of us, for all of us, to try to tackle permitting reform. But allowing massive corporations to simply cut a check to bypass the very real reasons that permitting exists in the first place poses a deep and grave danger to people across the country. In fact, in New York, there was something called a Northeast Supply Enhancement Project. It was a gas pipeline that would have involved putting 17 miles of pipeline in New York State's waterways before surfacing in Queens, a gas pipeline in waterways. The state determined that the pipeline would have significant water quality impacts and could potentially contaminate the state's waters with toxins like mercury. Mercury is a toxic metal that can cause a range of health problems, from neurological issues to kidney damage. And so, as this project moved through the permitting process, environmental experts as well as energy and financial experts all agreed that the project was too dangerous to proceed. But this bill would have allowed Williams Companies, the corporation behind this pipeline, to simply ignore and bypass all of that and just pay a fee in order to put gas pipelines and site them near highly sensitive water supplies. And this isn't something that's just a risk here in New York. It is a risk across the country. And again, I do believe that it's important that we discuss permitting reform, but to allow all of this to be bypassed completely is profoundly dangerous. That's why today I am introducing this amendment that requires that the Inspector General of the Department of Energy certify that the bill will not result in increased risks of corruption that jeopardize the integrity of our permitting process. Our permitting processes rely on inputs from energy experts, medical experts, and from environmental experts, as well as local communities who bear the brunt of these impacts. but we cannot allow polluters to bribe their way around these processes. We have seen families in Flint torn apart. We have seen Army and naval bases, families and communities around Army and naval bases exposed to PFAS that have had their lives torn apart. We cannot fast track corruption that allows massive corporations to put people's lives at risk. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. Is there discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Ohio recognized for discussion of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this amendment is not necessary. All the federal permitting processes will remain intact under these provisions. The language explicitly requires each federal, state, interstate, or tribal agency to review the application for the relevant federal authorizations prior to approval. Projects utilizing this process must comply with the underlying statutes, including anti-corruption standards. If projects violate the law, FERC maintains its ability to revoke permits and licenses it has issued if there are violations of the terms and conditions of the permits. And Mr. Chairman, I move that the amendment not be adopted.
Will you yield?
Yield, Mr. Chairman.
So thanks a lot. So I went to school in the Hudson River. We've talked about that. Other than the Commonwealth of Kentucky, probably one of the most beautiful spots in America, and we want to protect that too. And the local laws and state laws have to be followed even with this process. We wanted to make sure. So the reason I said that, when I was there in the 80s, you couldn't swim in the Hudson River because of what corporate America had done. Some unknowing, they just didn't realize the laws in the play, or we didn't know the science that we know now, but we want to make sure it's protected, and we feel that this does do that. And so I will yield back to my friend from Ohio.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and yield back the balance of my time.
Is there further discussion? The gentlelady from Florida, and then Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Representative Ocasio-Cortez for offering this very important amendment. It simply says that this will not go into effect until the Inspector General of the Department of Energy certifies that this will not result in an increased risk of corruption or pay to play. Although I do note that, remember, Donald Trump and Elon Musk fired the Inspector General at the Department of Energy. So they're already taking the cops off the beat. And what the Republicans want to do in this bill will make it worse. This pay-to-play scheme they want to jam through this reconciliation bill will simply sell out local communities back home to the higher spender, all to placate big oil companies and their billionaire friends. Now, I represent a Gulf Coast district in the Tampa Bay area. We're still reeling from the damage of Hurricanes Helene and Milton. But, you know, we really haven't gotten over the BP Deepwater Horizon blowout of some years ago, where the pollution just spewed out from that deep water well for months. Do you remember on TV it just kept going and going? So that seriously impacted the ability of small businesses to lure tourists. We haven't industrialized our coastline. So the damage was real, and we're just kind of recovering from the environmental economic damage. So now you want to say that neighbors across the Gulf Coast who know how dangerous these types of energy infrastructure projects are, that we aren't going to have a say in it, because this would force those Gulf Coast communities to host dangerous, polluting, liquefied natural gas export facilities. And since, Mr. Chairman, you were going back in time, you know, before I arrived in Congress and in public service, I was an environmental attorney. And what I learned is that it's very important to have the community engagement up front. It helps you address problems. Oftentimes, it helps the infrastructure facility be permitted. You get buy-in from the local community, right? There might be jobs, there might be other benefits, but maybe not. But you have to give them their say and their due process. It seems like everything right now is about not recognizing due process for anyone. And this would strip away the ability of local communities to have a say when you have a new polluting plant running through your own backyard. It would gut the normal judicial review by severely limiting who can challenge it. All of this without even studying whether or not the facilities and those pipelines are in the public interest. And we know that Republicans are scared to do these analyses. Why? Because there was analysis done at the end of the year by the Department of Energy that talked about liquefied natural gas exports. They said, that analysis said by the Department of Energy, that if we export more of our gas rather than using it here at home, our electric bills will go up. Plus, it will drastically worsen climate pollution that is warming the Gulf waters and supercharging these storms that also have a significant impact on the bottom lines of the families I represent. And our energy committee, subcommittee in this committee has heard over and over again from energy developers of all kinds, they need certainty to make long-term investments. They need independent regulators who can fairly make these assessments about whether or not these projects are in the public interest. So this bill is totally radical, just strips away any of that certainty, particularly as the president works to make energy regulators less independent. You know, there are significant environmental harms and health issues when you are trying to ram in a gas export polluting facility. But here, now, this may not be a gold-plated 747, but for just a small fee, big oil companies can bribe the Trump administration to get whatever they want. This bill would make Republicans, unfortunately, complicit in the blatant corruption and insider dealing that we've unfortunately come to expect from this administration. This bill doesn't create a two-track system. It completely alters the way that we review polluting projects in America. Instead of focusing on reform, Republicans are just attempting to abolish all permitting, do it through the back door, grease the skids, does nothing to lower energy costs for hardworking families. So please support her good amendment.
Thanks. The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Iowa for 5 minutes, just for discussion of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Solyndra.
Gentlelady yields back.
I yield back.
Okay. Gentlelady yields back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Gentlelady from California, gentlelady from Washington asked earlier. Gentlelady from Washington is recognized for 5 minutes to speak on the amendment. You're next, or after Republican. Solyndra.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I strike the last word to support Representative Ocasio-Cortez's amendment because this bill currently seeks to completely bypass protections for communities and landowners. And these pay-to-play provisions put not just a thumb, but an entire arm, maybe a body on the scale favoring oil and gas. It's giant corporations like Shell, BP, Chevron. They're the ones that have the wherewithal to pay to bypass all, let me repeat that, all permitting requirements. This bill is more of the drill baby drill agenda that we hear every week from our Republican colleagues. Look, I'm all for streamlining permitting for energy projects to address demand, and energy infrastructure has real impacts on our communities, but there's ways to streamline permitting and get new energy resources online without sidelining solar, wind, nuclear, hydropower, or hydrogen projects. Our Senate friends made serious progress on a bipartisan bill to do just that the last Congress. But this committee wouldn't bring it up for a hearing. Streamlining permitting is key if we're going to meet energy demands, but clean power should have the same opportunity as oil and gas, and we shouldn't be disregarding important environmental protections. So I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment. I yield back.
Would the gentlewoman yield to me? Would the gentleman?
Yeah, oh yes, absolutely, thank you.
You know, I just wanted to point out on this amendment that, you know, the gentlewoman from New York, Ocasio-Cortez, talked about LNG in particular. And I'm just reading the LNG section where it says, an application to export natural gas, right? right, from the United States, a non-refundable
Mystic,
charge of
my
$1 million.
kitten, is
And
on
for
my desk,
purposes
and
of
she hit the mute button.
this section, such a non-refundable charge of $1 million, and I'm quoting, was imposed and collected, shall be deemed to be in the public interest, and such an application shall be granted without modification or delay. Now, I heard Mr. Latta say there was still some review, but this is not, there's no review. In other words, they think that because this says if you pay the $1 million, that means that the payment of the fee is the public interest, right? So rather than review this to see whether or not it's going to raise natural gas prices or whether it has any kind of environmental implications, for the public interest, that's what the review is for. This says that you pay the $1 million, and that check is in the public interest. And therefore, you don't have to do anything, and there's no further review whatsoever. So, I mean, I can't think of anything that's more of a pay-to-play than that. It's unbelievable. But I'll yield back to the gentlewoman.
Gentlelady yields back. Is there any further discussion on the Republican side? The gentlelady from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak in support of this amendment.
Gentlelady's recognized.
Thank you. Given the corruption that is at play with this administration right now, there could be nothing more important than doing everything we can to stop the corruption, stop the pay and play. I mean, you're talking about an administration that came in and fired inspector generals. We've heard today that these Medicaid cuts to millions of people are about cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Yet, the inspector general that was supposed to be overseeing the waste, fraud, and abuse at Medicaid was also fired. So, in the interest of talking about Medicaid and what's at stake, my constituent, Brian, wrote to me and said, "Dear Congresswoman, my name is Brian Gutierrez. I'm one of your constituents living with spina bifida, a lifelong disability that has shaped every part of my journey, but has not defined my potential. I'm writing to share how Medicaid has been the foundation of my survival, my independence, and my ability to thrive. For me and millions like me, Medicaid is not just a safety net. It's the reason we are alive and moving forward. From childhood through adulthood, Medicaid has covered the surgeries, specialist care, mobility equipment, and ongoing treatments that my condition requires. With Medicaid, I have access to prosthetics and leg braces that allow me to move through the world with dignity. With Medicaid, I can see the doctors and therapists who help me manage the complex and evolving nature of spina bifida. These supports don't just keep me stable, they give me the freedom to live and work and advocate and participate fully in my community. In April 2024, I was diagnosed with early-stage colorectal cancer, a terrifying moment that could have changed everything. Because of Medicaid, I received timely and expert care, including a successful endoscopy resection that helped me avoid more invasive treatment. Today, I am in remission. That outcome was only possible because I had access to specialists, procedures, and follow-up care without delay or denial. Medicaid gave me a fighting chance, and I took it. Medicaid also supports the in-home supportive services, the IHHS program, which is vital to my daily life. My mother is my primary caregiver and an IHSS worker, providing the personal care I need to remain safely and independently at home. IHHS is not just about convenience, it's about dignity, autonomy, and the ability to be part of my community instead of being isolated in an institution. Medicaid's investments in programs like IHHS strengthens families, sustains caregiving, and keeps people like me where we belong, at home and in control of our lives. This story is not mine alone. Roughly 55% of adults with spina bifida rely on Medicaid. In California, nearly 3 million people with disabilities depend on it. Medicaid is the backbone of our healthcare system and a lifeline for many with disabilities, including seniors and working class families. But that lifeline is now under attack. The proposed Republican budget resolution includes devastating $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid, which currently operates with $650 billion in federal funding. These cuts would decimate the program, eliminating or reducing essential services, ending IHHS for countless families, forcing people out of their homes, and taking away health care from those who need it most. For many of us, these cuts are not abstract numbers. They are the difference between stability and crisis, between life and death. I'm healthy today because Medicaid stood by me. I'm thriving because I've had consistent, reliable access to the care I need. Medicaid makes independence possible. It makes survival possible. It makes dignity possible. Any threat to Medicaid is a threat to our lives. Thank you for your time and your leadership. Sincerely, Brian Gutierrez, constituent, spina bifida advocate, and Medicaid recipient. And again, how is this related to the amendment? Well, inspector generals can help save money. Inspector generals can help get out the waste, the fraud, and the abuse. If my colleagues cared about that so much, they would have spoken up when the inspector general that oversees Medicaid was fired. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Just remind the committee, I understand at the end you made a connection to the underlying amendment, but the subject to the bill or the amendment is what we're debating today. So I'll remind the committee of that.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that it's directly related. It was about inspector generals and about cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think that there is a relationship with corruption and pay to play with what's in the bill.
Thank you. So the chair will now recognize, was it the gentlelady from Texas? Any Republican side? So the gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I have a couple of questions about the amendment, so I hope that somebody will be able to help me out. But I guess let me preface my questions by saying that I saw these provisions, obviously like many other people, for the first time in the last 36 hours. And I think everybody in here knows I support permitting reform. I have supported permitting reform. It is critically important to people in my community in Houston. And we've been talking about permitting reform for years. I just double checked with Mr. Peters. This is the first, he's been working on it tirelessly. I feel like every hearing we have, Mr. Peters says we need to do permitting reform, and I'm right behind him. This is the first time I've ever heard you can just pay $10 million and get a permit. You can just pay $1 million and get a permit. You can just pay all this money and you'll be deemed acceptable. This is not a proposal we've been talking about, and frankly, it's pretty surprising to me. Now, I think we should do our job and do permitting reform, and there are a lot of great ideas that we need to be exploring. I think everybody here, hopefully by now, knows I also support LNG exports, and in fact, I've had a bill for the last 2 Congresses to deem in our national interest to export LNG to our NATO allies and to Ukraine. I have begged this committee to take that bill up because I think it is critically important. And I took issue with the time of the review in the last administration because I thought that that was in our national interest. And I continue to think that supporting Ukraine and our NATO allies through exporting US LNG is a very good idea. So I'm just surprised to see all these provisions in the bill, and so I want to know if maybe council can clear up the question from the earlier set of questions about whether what I read in the summary from the memorandum from the majority says that once the fee is paid under section 41002, upon the application and collection of the fee, the Secretary of Energy shall deem the application in the public interest for national gas exports. I support natural gas exports, but is that in fact the case, that there is no other review? And likewise, is that also the case with the other pipeline permitting, that you just pay the fee and that's it? Can council answer that question?
Congresswoman, I think it's following FERC review for both of those provisions.
So it's not automatically deemed in the public interest as defined in the majority memo here?
Well, it depends on which, the public interest is for a Department of Energy determination, and then FERC would continue to review the normal NEPA review and environmental reviews for any construction associated with the project.
Okay, so the payment of the $1 million deems the application in the public interest at DOE. That's the extent of their review according to this amendment.
Yeah, under the natural, yes, and then it would go over to FERC for the normal FERC process.
So if you paid $1 million to, say, export natural gas
To a non-free trade,
right, to a non-free trade country like Iran, you just pay $1 million, it's in the national interest. Or China, right? I mean, you pay the fee and it's deemed in the national interest.
I think there's some limits with sanction. If there's sanctions, it wouldn't apply.
Is that in the bill text?
Pardon me? No, that's current law. I'm sorry, Congressman. Yes, that's current law.
And where is that covered in the bill text?
This does not affect the current law. This is just providing for the natural gas, how it's treated under the Natural Gas Act under Section 3.
Okay, well, I think there's still, because this proposal that's shown up in the last 36 hours has kind of come out of left field, I feel like maybe we need to get to the bottom of some of these questions about what, in fact, it means to pay this, and this is why this amendment is a good idea, to make sure that we really vet this and understand it. The other question I have for council is, in terms of the payments, the $1 million user fee, the $10 million user fee, are there provisions included for how these fees can be paid? Could, for example, can you pay these with Trump coin? I mean, yeah.
I think it would be how fees are paid now under current applications.
Okay, so it doesn't exclude Trump coin as a form of payment?
The text doesn't make that distinction.
Okay, well, let's think about that. I see I've gone over my 5 minutes, so Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back, but I do hope that we'll continue to assess this and vote in favor of this amendment.
Thank you. Gentlelady yields back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none on the Republican, any on the Democrat? Gentleman from California, you're recognized for 5 minutes for discussion of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It does occur to me that as an environmental lawyer, it would have been pretty easy just to say, oh, you just pay $10 million and you're over. This is going to put more lawyers out of work than AI, I think. Anyway, with that, I'd like to yield to the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you. I just want us to be clear about the provision ahead of us, in front of us right now. There are plenty of things that seek permitting, that need a permit, whether it's solar energy, wind energy, gas, oil. If you want to construct something big, you need to go through a process of review to seek a permit. This bill says to oil and gas, to fossil fuel companies and fossil fuel companies only, you can pay money when healthcare experts, environmental experts are saying, if you place a pipeline here through this community, people will get cancer, people could get reproductive cancers, people could be poisoned, people could be exposed to mercury, lead, there could be grave health and environmental factors, and an oil and gas company can pay $10 million to waive all of that away to be deemed, quote, in the public interest. Even if that pipeline is not shown to increase, to lower energy costs, even if that pipeline is shown to increase health or environmental risk factors. And what this amendment does, the only thing this amendment is asking us to do is to say, can the Inspector General, the watchdog of the Department of Energy, certify that corruption risks are not increasing to jeopardize the integrity of the permitting process? This amendment isn't even changing that underlying very disturbing provision. This is saying, can we certify that there's not a risk of corruption here? And I'm finding that the opposition to this is not really being stated. Additionally, I think also to the ranking member's point, in just the fact of paying $10 million makes it automatically in the public interest alone. And what happens when that $10 million in the public interest then starts to run up against real environmental health and other risk factors? Which public interest prevails? The check? And I want to, I'm interested in the ranking member's thoughts in reading these provisions on the bill, so I'm happy to yield to you if you have any thoughts on that, Mr. Pallone.
Well, it literally says, I mean, I've never heard anything like it, it's so outrageous, that the non-refundable charge shall be deemed in the public interest. So I don't know how you can read that other than to say that actually paying the fee satisfies the public interest criteria. So I've never seen that in any piece of legislation in my life where, in other words, what they're saying is it's in the public interest for you to pay. It's in the public interest for you to give us $1 million.
So-
That's the public interest.
So will the ranking member yield back? So we're hearing here right now that this bill has carved out a specific industry, not anyone seeking permitting reform, a specific industry, just oil and gas, to just pay to bypass all of the guardrails, all of the safety, all of any of the rules and guidelines to cite anything responsibly. And you can just pay money to bypass any concerns around health risks, and for some reason, there's no corruption risk there. I mean, I spent 6 years on the oversight committee taking on corporate corruption, taking on governmental corruption, including on a bipartisan basis. I too have never seen anything like this, ever. I sat on the Natural Resources Committee, saw and heard testimony from tons of people, whether it's from mining, whether it's from any other kinds of exposures, kids with developmental disabilities that can never be recovered. And all we are asking for is a certification that risks of corruption will not increase from the Inspector General under the Trump administration's own Department of Energy. That's the only thing that's up here today. Thank you, and I yield back.
I yield back.
Mr. Chair.
Gentleman from California yields back. Is there further discussion on the Republican side? Seeing none on the Democrat side? Gentlelady from Massachusetts is recognized to speak on the amendment.
I yield to the Congresswoman from Texas.
Thank you so much for yielding. And I just have a follow-up because as my colleague from New York was talking, I thought, well, I represent a lot of people who work in this business, and to me, it also feels like it could be a shakedown of the people in that business. Everyone around here talks about how much money they have, so we'll just make them pay a lot more to get consideration of their permit. If you don't pay the fee, you're in trouble. Well, that's not fair to folks either. So I think it's really important. I also think for my friends on the other side of the aisle, we should easily agree that we can certify, that we should vote for this amendment, make sure that we have vetted this concept thoroughly so that it doesn't hurt our constituents across the board in every state. And I also think that this is such a risky proposal. You know this is headed to the courts. You know there's huge litigation risk here. And so I don't know that anybody's going to take advantage of this anyway. I don't know anybody asking for this sort of system, but certainly to me, in the opposite, I mean, on the other side, it kind of feels like a shakedown of the folks who do this work. And you shouldn't have to pay $10 million to get a permit when it is in our national interest. You shouldn't have to pay $1 million to get your permits reviewed. And I think that, there's more than one way to look at this, and I think it's really important that we make sure that we are not penalizing people who are participants throughout the industry. And I think that it's important that we make sure for the American people that there is no risk of corruption here. It's certainly coming up in this way for the first time raises a lot of red flags that I think should give everybody on both sides of the aisle on this committee pause before moving forward to put in this legislation. And with that, I will yield back to the gentlewoman from Massachusetts.
I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Yeah, I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman's recognized.
Just a question for council. In reading this or putting it together, appreciating the fact that somebody's going to spend $10 million to get something that they wouldn't otherwise get. Can you confirm that the language is written in a way that there is no risk of corruption?
I don't think that's, I think that's a policy judgment for the members.
So there is a policy question here. Is that fair to say? This is a policy question?
Well,
That is a policy question, not for council to answer.
So we are debating a policy question.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I yield back.
Chairman?
Mr. Carter is recognized.
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Counsel, can I ask you a question, sir?
Yes, yes, sir.
Presumably, a person pays this enormous fee, $10 million, whatever it is, so they can bypass permitting, correct?
That is not correct, sir.
What is correct?
So under the language, the fee is paid, and in the application, there's two steps. The application is deemed in the public interest for the purposes of export, and then the process begins for FERC to review the construction of the facility and everything associated with the facility and the actual operation of the facility. That is where environmental and other considerations come in, and this does not affect that.
So is this not giving an unfair advantage to those who can afford to pay $10 million versus those who can't? Because it sounds like if you have enough money, you can bypass the rules and pay to play. It doesn't sound like a leveled playing field to me. So help me understand what happens to the person that can, let me answer the question. You're doing all kind of facial gestures.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to read this too.
Okay.
Tom, I'm sorry, sir.
The person that can stroke a check for $10 million versus the person who can't. Why is that fair? Just because this person has more money?
That is not a technical question
It's not a technical question?
that the council needs to address.
I think it's technical. Why is it? I'm trying to determine the difference between someone who can pay $10 million and someone who can't, and that's pretty technical as far as I'm concerned. I want to know if operator A has 10 and operator B doesn't, but they have the same widgets, why are they not being treated equally?
The way that the text is written is the secretary shall, by rule, impose and collect for each application to export natural gas from the United States to a foreign country, which there is not in effect a free trade agreement requiring national treatment for the trade in natural gas, et cetera, shall then be deemed in the public
What's
interest.
et
So
cetera, et cetera?
any applicant to a non-free trade, for an export to a non-free trade company will pay the fee.
So this
That's it.
amendment merely says that we want to have the Trump administrations, not some nefarious or some make-believe person, but an inspector general that works for this administration. You know, we talk a lot about waste, fraud, abuse, and making sure that we have provisions to root them out, to make sure these things are not being done in a nefarious way. This amendment merely says, let's put a belt and suspenders to make sure that we're checking those boxes. Your smirk is really, it's a little distracting because I'm asking you a legitimate question and you're smirking.
I'm not certain.
Okay, I'm sorry. I interpreted it as a smirk. So if it wasn't a smirk, so be it. So help me understand people that are relying on, as it's been mentioned over and over again, these issues of environmental. Listen, I'm from Louisiana. I understand the importance of oil exploration. I also understand that we should reform our permitting, but we should not do so in a way that it feels like a pay to play. If you can write a big check, you can expedite. So what's the difference, I'll go again, between the person who can and the person who can't? Just a check?
I can refer you to the text of the provision, sir.
I've read the text, and we're all speaking and asking questions that presumably you are equipped to answer, and this amendment is being rejected, and I still have not found the basis of why. Some will say it's not necessary because we already have X and Y. Well, why would a belt, suspenders, and a safety net not be appropriate to protect the American people?
Sir, I think that's a policy question for the members to discuss.
All right, I yield.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you. Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
You know, I think we can end with the pearl clutching. What we're talking about is a user fee.
We all seem to be comfortable with user fees when it comes to the FDA. That's all this is. There are no laws being changed, no policies being changed. All of the laws that still govern permitting must be followed.
So this isn't true.
That's all that's happening here.
And
The
I
claims
keep hearing the word corruption.
Representative
Now,
Crenshaw is
depending on how
making
you
right
mean the
now
word
are just not
corruption
true.
and how this somehow opens
Paying
the door for
millions
more
of
of
dollars
it, I'm
actually
not sure.
gets you
But
put
I might
into a
remind everyone
category
that there's
that
already
says
laws
we're going to deem your project in the
preventing
public interest.
corruption.
That's
however
not a
you
user
mean
fee.
that word.
The equivalent
There's no reason that those
analogy
laws
to
would
the
be
FDA
changed,
would be
given this new
if
user fee.
you said, if you give us $10 million with your drug application, we will deem your drug to be safe and effective.
Exercise the reconciliation of the Inflation Reduction Act, hundreds of billions of dollars went to third-party NGOs, which supposedly doled out that money to clean energy projects. Money we'll never really know where it went. And the Inspector General from the EPA sat in front of this committee and told us he had no way of knowing where that was going. That sounds a lot to me like corruption. Maybe that's what we should be investigating. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentlelady from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized.
So let's be clear, this is not a user fee. Because when you pay a user fee, you still have to go through all of the regulatory approvals required for your project. That's not what the bill does. Reading the majority's memo, in section 41002, it says, notwithstanding any requirements or statutory obligations under federal and state law, including citing, environmental and safety reviews, and permitting, section 41002 requires an application for a certificate of crossing to include a $50,000 payment and directs FERC to issue the certificate. When you read the actual text of the bill, it says on page 4, line 11, the commission shall, upon payment of the fee in the amount of $50,000 by a person requesting a certificate of crossing, issue such certificate. So let's be clear, that's not a user fee. That is, you pay $50,000, you get your permit, period. Notwithstanding any provision of federal or state law. So you're also saying, like, that's not a user fee, okay? That is, we are cutting out, and this isn't even permitting reform. This is, you pay $50,000, you get your FERC permit for this particular project. No if, and, or but, that is not ambiguous. That is clear as crystal, which is not the definition of the user fee, which is not even permitting reform, other than to say, if you got the money, you get it. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little disappointed in my colleagues on the other side of the aisle for not actually reading the Natural Gas Act. Y'all know better. You know, when you read the Natural Gas Act, that, let's just talk about the permitting review first off. It doesn't skip a permitting review. Y'all know this. There's no skipping of this. LNG export applications will still go through, and they will always go through a rigorous process through FERC. And Section 3 of the Natural Gas Act is very explicit on this. So it is false when you say that it's not going to go through a process. It does. It will go through a process. It will always go through a process. That's current law. So this argument that it's not going to go through is completely false. The FERC process includes a rigorous environmental review, including NEPA. That will still be adhered to. So once again, we've got, for everybody in the audience out here, lies about this process.
Objection, he used the word lies again, it's a
these
double
are-
standard.
these are
Take it, Mr.
falsehoods.
Chairman.
Move to take his
These are
words down.
complete
I'm going to
falsehoods
move to take his words down.
that are not true.
Mr. Chairman, I think you should gavel
Ma'am,
him
you're
down.
not recognized, ma'am, you're not recognized.
I would like to take his words down. You set out the rules not to use that word.
Bring back the
We on
chairman.
the Democratic side
Bring
didn't
back
do
the
it.
chairman. This man just violated what the
You
chairman
are not
told
following the
all
rules of the
about.
chair, Mr. Chairman.
Bring back the chairman.
Move to strike and
Bring
take
back
down
the
his
chairman.
words.
Mr. Chairman.
We're going to suspend.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask something?
Yes.
We had a sort of unwritten agreement that no one was going to use the word lie. So if we could just continue with that, I know Mr. August maybe wasn't here when that happened. Well, what I'm asking you is that rather than take down words, we just agree that from now on, we're not going to use the word lie. I don't know if August was
This is
here
gonna
when
go
we agreed
very,
to that. But that
very
was
late
the
into the
agreement,
night.
that we would not use the word lie anymore during the markup. So if that's okay with everyone, let's just continue. No more use of the word lie.
Mr. Chairman, can we agree to tell the truth today?
You can use disdain, just not use the word lie. That was the agreement. All right. If you don't want to go by the agreement, then we're going to have to go back to taking down the
The
word.
gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you. Let's talk about the public interest. Let's talk about what's in the public interest. Because again, if you read the Natural Gas Act, Section 3 is very explicit in the public interest. And it assumes that if you're not on a terror watch list, that if you're not Iran, Russia, Venezuela, or one of the countries that has been deemed to not be in the public interest, that it assumes that the Secretary of Energy will automatically approve the export of LNG to non-FTA countries. That's already the assumption. And what we saw in the last 4 years was that there was only one administration who didn't think it was in the public interest, which is why LNG exports were paused. Only one administration in the history of the Natural Gas Act without explanation that paused LNG exports. So it is disappointing to see that we're not actually dealing in facts, because the Natural Gas Act is very explicit on both the ability to permit with a user fee as well as being in the public interest. Mr. Chairman, I hope that we will deal in truth.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
Sure.
I'm curious as to hearing everything that you've put forward. Why is it, and what is the rationale, if there's support for what you all would deem a user fee, et cetera, why only single out oil and gas companies to have access?
I think I'm the wrong person to ask it. You can ask the chairman on that
Well,
question. But
we're all voting on the bill. I presume you'd be supportive. I presume you support the provision.
I'll take my time back. To have a germane conversation and debate on this particular issue, I wanted to address 2 points, and that was the public interest, and that was also on how the process works to be permitted. So I'm sure that we will get into that debate. And by the way, to the gentlelady from New York, I'd like to invite you to come and see West Texas.
I love West Texas. I'd be happy to go.
Come see how safe this process is. Come see how environmentally secure it is. There are members on your side of the aisle who have come and seen it. I want to invite you to come out there and see what's happening that I think would alleviate a lot of these concerns. And on the issue of corruption, I associate myself with my colleague from Texas, Mr. Crenshaw, on the fact that this is a process that is taking in revenue to the federal government with something that is already deemed to be in the public interest in a process that will go through the full environmental review in a way that will be expeditious and will add more money to the Treasury. I'm glad that my side of the aisle has thought of this, and I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to yield my time to the gentlewoman from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask council a question. Did you write the majority memorandum for this markup? Or statutory obligations under federal and state law mean? When a court,
Can you identify which page number you're referencing?
I am on page 2 of the majority memorandum. I'm sorry, page 3. Under section 41002, the very first sentence says, notwithstanding any requirements or statutory obligation under federal and state law. Is it the interpretation, I don't know if you wrote this part, and if you're not the right person to answer this question, then please point me to the right person. But is it the understanding of the person that wrote that sentence that it is accurate?
Ma'am, maybe go to the legislative text
Okay,
instead.
let's do that. On page 4, line 11, the commission shall. What does shall mean?
It shall collect a fee.
And if a statute of Congress passed says shall, then doesn't that mean, as the memo says, notwithstanding any other requirements, shall will happen once you do what the statute says? Once you pay the fee, the commission shall issue the certificate. Doesn't that mean notwithstanding any requirement or statutory obligation under federal and state law?
I think we'll refer to what the statutory text says. So the commission shall, upon payment of a fee in the amount of $50,000 by a person requesting a certificate of crossing, issue to such person such certificate of crossing.
So do you disagree with what the majority memorandum says section 41002 will do based on the statutory text?
I just stick to the text. I don't want to comment on the memorandum.
Okay, well, I got a law degree from the University of Virginia that I paid a whole lot of money for, and it is my interpretation that this is accurate. Shall mean shall, and notwithstanding any requirement or statutory obligation under federal or state law means exactly that, and that is how a court will interpret it, no matter what my non-lawyer colleagues on the other side of the aisle think. I yield back.
The difference between shall
Gentleman
and may
yields.
is
Mr.
first
Chair, I
week of
yield
first
back.
year of law school stuff.
Gentleman yields.
First week of law school stuff. You don't get a law degree if you don't know what shall means.
If there's no further discussion, the vote occurs on the amendment. The gentleman requests a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Latta. Mr. Latta votes no. Mr. Griffith. Mr. Griffith votes no. Mr. Bilirakis.
They want fossil fuel companies to be able to pay a fee and satisfy a great portion of the permitting process. There is a determination in permitting whether or not the project is in the public interest, because it's a large project that's going to impact the public. We look at whether or not it's in the interest of the public, in the interest of the American people. And instead of doing a determination, conducting an analysis, thinking critically, looking at evidence, weighing it, experts weighing in, they want to say you can pay us $10 million and we'll forgo all of that and deem, another law school word, that your project is in the public interest because you gave us $10 million. It is corruption. It is corruption. It's not a user fee. A user fee would be pay us $10 million and then we will consider your application. That's how user fees work. At FDA, when they are submitting an application for a new molecular entity, a new drug, they have to pay a fee. Pharma has to pay a fee. Pfizer has to pay a fee. Whoever has to pay a fee. And that fee goes to fund the work of the formerly independent FDA scientists who would consider both safety and efficacy. So when Crenshaw says it's just like a user fee at FDA, that's just objectively false.
Mr. Langworthy? Mr. Langworthy votes no. Mr. Kane? Mr. Ruley? Mr. Ruley votes no. Mr. Evans? Mr. Evans votes no. Mr. Goldman? Mr. Goldman votes no. Mrs. Fedorchak? Mrs. Fedorchak votes no. Mr. Pallone? Mr. Pallone votes aye. Ms. DeGette? Ms. DeGette votes aye. Ms. Schakowsky? Ms. Schakowsky votes aye. Ms. Matsui? Ms. Matsui
And I want to be
votes
clear,
aye. Ms. Castor?
majority council knows what the definition of
Castor
shall
votes
is.
aye.
They're not
Mr. Tonko?
incompetent.
I
They just
shall
don't want
vote
to answer
yes.
the questions.
Mr. Tonko
They know
votes
what they're
aye.
doing. They just don't want
Ms.
to answer
Clark?
the questions, which is why
Ms. Clark votes
Representative
aye.
AOC
Mr.
and the
Ruiz?
ranking member are asking the questions.
Mr. Ruiz votes aye. Mr. Peters? Mr. Peters votes aye. Mrs. Dingle? Mrs. Dingle votes aye. Mr. Veazey? Mr. Veazey votes aye. Ms. Kelly? Ms. Kelly votes aye. Ms. Badagan? Ms. Badagan votes aye. Mr. Soto? Mr. Soto votes aye. Ms. Schreier? Ms. Schreier votes aye. Ms. Strahan? Ms. Strahan votes aye. Ms. Fletcher? Ms. Fletcher votes aye. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez? Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes aye. Mr. Auchincloss? Mr. Auchincloss votes aye. Mr. Carter of Louisiana? Mr. Carter of Louisiana votes aye. Mr. Menendez? Mr. Menendez votes aye. Mr. Mullen? Mr. Mullen votes aye. Mr. Landsman? Mr. Landsman votes aye. Ms. McClellan? Ms. McClellan votes aye.
How is Mr. Carter recorded?
Chairman Guthrie? Chairman Guthrie votes no.
How is Mr. Carter recorded?
Mr. Carter of Georgia is not recorded.
How is Mr.
Mr.
Palmer
Carter of
recorded?
Georgia votes no. Mr. Palmer is not recorded. Mr. Palmer votes no.
Does anyone else seek to be recognized, to be recorded? The clerk will report the result.
Mr. Chairman, on that vote, there were 24 ayes and 28 noes.
The amendment is not agreed to. Are there any
The
further
majority just
amendments?
refused to allow the Inspector General to require that
For
the
what
Inspector
purpose does the
General
gentleman
certify
from
this won't
Massachusetts
increase
seek
corruption
recognition?
before it goes into
Mr.
effect.
Chairman, I have an amendment at the
The
desk.
clerk will report the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, could the gentleman please specify his amendment?
Sorry, energy underscore 14 UK 301.
Mr. Chairman, could the gentleman please repeat that?
Sorry, 14 UK 301.
Amendment offered by Mr. Auchincloss. At the appropriate place, insert the following section protecting American
Without
families.
objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, may I reserve an objection?
Gentleman reserves. Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes in support of his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment would prevent this act from taking effect until the administration returns the tariff levels on energy products to their levels on January 19th of this year. This week's tariff announcements shouldn't fool anyone. President Trump creates uncertainty and havoc by raising
is going to
tariffs
be
and
a
then
very
claims
long
victory
time.
when he lowers the tariffs that he himself put in place.
Probably tomorrow
All this
morning
does is extend
before we get to
uncertainty for another
Medicaid
90
at this
days.
rate.
First, there were no tariffs on energy. Then, the president slapped a 25%
great
tariff on
time
Canada and Mexico.
to call your
Then we
member's
decided,
office
oh wait,
and
it should
tell
be
them you
10%.
don't want them to cut
Then actually we
Medicaid,
decided to
and if you've
comply
done
with our
that
trade
already,
agreement with
it's a
them.
great time
So
to
energy
reach out to
tariffs with
someone
them
else
were
you
at
know
zero.
and
But
ask
wait,
them
now
to
we
call
put
their
reciprocal
member's
tariffs
office
with rates
and say,
varying
"Don't
for every
cut
country on
Medicaid."
the entire world. So nobody knew what the energy tariffs were. And then there was the 25% tariff on top of all that for steel and aluminum. It got so disastrous for business that the grid operators from New England and New York had to file emergency petitions at FERC because they weren't sure if there even was a tariff on Canadian electricity, and if so, how much it was and whose responsibility it was to collect it. We've heard repeatedly from our Republican colleagues that American, quote, energy dominance is the goal of this administration, and that this committee is pursuing an all-of-the-above energy strategy. But it's all talk. This administration's actions, whether increasing prices for American consumers through tariffs or proposing a bill like the one we are considering today, will have the opposite effect: American energy scarcity and dependence. Tariffs on key components for new energy construction like steel is chilling investment in new projects. We will not be able to meet future rising demand from electrification and AI data centers if we cripple our ability to build out energy generation and transmission. The policies in this bill, like gutting the Loan Programs Office that has, as of last September, financed a $44 billion portfolio of energy projects and advanced technology manufacturing facilities, will further raise prices for consumers and limit our ability to build out nuclear, geothermal, and other sources of energy to meet future demand. We cannot have energy dominance when tariffs combined with these policies are going to accelerate rising energy costs and utility bills for our constituents. Industry needs certainty and predictability to make the kinds of long-term investments the energy sector requires. What are they getting instead? In the words of one business owner, quote, "I have never felt more uncertainty about our business in my entire 40-plus year career." That was the owner of an energy company whose survey responses were published by the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas in late March. Another one wrote, quote, "This is not energy dominance." Returning tariffs to January 19th levels will lower the cost of energy inputs, lower energy costs to consumers, and provide the market stability necessary to invest in a true all-of-the-above energy strategy, not one where the administration and congressional Republicans are picking winners and losers. Congress can put a stop to this reckless economic policy whenever Speaker Johnson decides to stand up for our Article I responsibilities. He has shown no interest in doing so, and actually has actively sought to silence debate on the issue. And so this committee must take action. If you want lower energy prices, this amendment is for you. If you want more investment in American energy, this amendment is for you. If you want us to be able to beat China in the AI race, this amendment is for you. The only reason you should oppose this amendment is if you don't want any of those things. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and strike the last word.
So recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this amendment adds a new section relating to tariffs. This is not pertinent to the underlying purpose of this legislation, and I therefore urge the rejection of the amendment.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
recognized.
I'd like to officially welcome Katie Corcoran and her son Connor. They traveled all the way from Louisiana to Washington, D.C. to be with us here today in this committee room.
Democratic members are going to
brave,
try to keep the
great
focus on Medicaid throughout the hearing for a
to
few
travel,
reasons.
to
One,
be here, to
it's
lead their
incredibly
lives in
important
Louisiana.
to
They're here because
the majority,
they're
the
proof
Republican majority,
that
have
Medicaid means life.
deliberately put
When Connor
Medicaid
was first diagnosed, his
at the
physicians
end of this
warned
very
his
lengthy
parents that his
process
life
in order to
was
try to
extremely
discourage
fragile
us
and that there was a
and the
high
people in
chance
the room.
he would not
And
survive
finally, they're going to keep doing it
He was blind,
because there are
developmentally
disabled
delayed,
people in that room
had poor muscle tone, was fed
who are
through a
there
tube,
fighting
had
for
numerous
Medicaid.
types of seizures every day, had an underdeveloped pituitary gland and needed hormone replacement medications, had an immune deficiency disorder and was nonverbal. Medicaid funding and waivers like the New Opportunities Waiver now grants that Connor received in Louisiana have been and continue to be the lifeline for him and his family. It provides him with the quality tailored care that he needs at home 24/7 and in his community. I invited Cater and Connor and their family to DC because America needs to know what and when you talk about cutting Medicaid funding, who you're hurting. The faces, the real people, not just names on paper, but real people. You're hurting your neighbors, the people you go to church with, the people you shop with, you could be hurting your own future family members. It is but by the grace of God that this could have been any of us. It could have been any of us. Just so happened it's the Corkins. These cuts aren't just numbers. We're all one birth away from our own Connor. These are policy decisions that will have life-altering consequences for families like Connor and Katie's. When you take away theirs and millions of others Medicaid away tonight in this committee, when we do this, when everyone's gone home late at night, remember, the people that are here now and the people that have gone back home are the ones that you're hurting. I urge you to please take a long look. Look at these individuals, look at their families, look into their stories, and don't simply tell them, go home, it's going to be fine, this is not going to impact you. When we know that there's no way that we're going to come up with $715 million, and it's not going to hurt everyday Americans. Yes, it will. And we owe it to them to look in their faces and tell them the truth. That's what we're attempting to do. God bless you for your incredible advocacy. Thank you for braving the time and the challenge of moving with your entire family to be here. Coy, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting your family. We will continue to work on your behalf. And I urge all my members to imprint in their faces, in their brains, young Connor. And remember, he's not able to fight for himself, but we are able to fight for him. God bless you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
So recognized.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to bring light to and talk a lot about this tariff deal is the small businesses, because no one's really talking about the small businesses when it comes to these tariffs. There's been a lot of talk about how much this is going to cost car manufacturers and big ag and other people, but no one's really talking about the small business owner. And there was one gentleman that was featured in the Wall Street Journal that said that he was going to have to pay a $9,000 fee for a $5,500 order. There have been small businesses that have employed 5 people and they've had to lay off 1. And businesses that have employed 20 people and they've had to lay off 3 or 4. Businesses saying they're not going to be able to get merchandise in. And it's going to really put a strain on them, and it's going to be hard on them, and it's going to put a lot of downward pressure on the economy. And I want it to be clear. This is about protecting American consumers, the Auchincloss Amendment that I'm talking on here, and ensuring that the bill does not worsen the burden they're already feeling from high energy costs. If this legislation is truly about affordability, then it cannot ignore the reality that tariffs, especially those imposed without coordination or strategic rationale, can raise prices on everything from natural gas to solar panels to the critical minerals we need for energy technologies and for national defense. This amendment ensures that we're not handing out giveaways or pushing regulatory changes at the expense of American families, all while tariffs and Liberation Day, also known as Liquidation Day, quietly drives up cost. We need a baseline level of economic honesty here. If we're going to overhaul parts of our energy system, let's at least ensure we're not doing it under artificial price distortions that make it cost to real Americans. This is absolutely not about partisanship. It's about accountability and economic realism. If Republicans want to argue that their energy provisions are good for consumers, then they should not have a problem making sure that those policies don't kick in while import tariffs are artificially inflating prices. Let's help these small business owners out that are really taking it to the teeth, man. They are hurting. I urge my colleagues to make sure that this common sense amendment passes. Let's make sure that this bill does what it claims and doesn't become another backdoor subsidy scheme while families in Texas and across the country foot the bill during the chaos caused by these tariffs. Thank you, Mr. I'd like to yield time to Mr. Carter from the
Thank you, Mr. Veazey. In my haste in introducing the Cochrans, I did not recognize Cooper, the big brother who's here to support his brother, or little brother, big brother, little brother. Little brother here to support his big brother along with the family. Cooper, thank you for your being here as well. Thank you. I yield.
You're going to notice Republicans are clapping as well.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we're seeing here today is a travesty. Republicans ran on inflation. They promised to bring down costs for American families, but now,
They
once in
learned in
office, they're pushing
2017
policies
that
that will do
billing
the
and
exact
jeering
opposite.
doesn't work
Policies
as a
that will
political
raise the cost of
strategy.
living for working Americans across the country. It's wrong, it's obscene, and it's a slap in the face to the families we're here to serve. An estimate just last month found that Trump's tariffs would cost the average household nearly $5,000 every single year. That's not a rounding error. That's groceries, utility bills, gas in the tank, medication for a child with asthma. That's $5,000 a year taken straight out of a working class family's pocket. And you want to talk about unpredictability? These tariffs are completely chaotic. As my colleague, Mr. Auchincloss, pointed out, one day they're on, the next they're off. One product is hit, another isn't. You've got some energy imports exempt from tariffs under USMCA, others slapped with a 10% rate, and the rest subject to whatever so-called reciprocal rate another country decides. On top of that, we're talking about a blanket 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, key inputs for nearly every single clean energy project in the country. This isn't strategy. It's whiplash economic policy. It's confusing, and it's a green light for corporations to jack up prices, whether tariffs are in effect or not. That's what happens when you create uncertainty. Corporations hedge their bets, and guess who pays the price? The consumer, working families, every time. And what does this mean in practice? It means gas prices go up, electricity bills go up, the cost of heating and cooling in your homes go up. That's not theory, that's reality. It's especially real in places like my district in the desert, where utility bills already stretch family budgets thin and extreme heat is a matter of life and death. This bill doesn't fix the problem, it makes it worse. It adds more instability to an already volatile situation, and it does it at the expense of American families. And while our Republican colleagues are doubling down on tariffs that make life more expensive, they're also gutting the very programs that would help bring costs down and build a stronger, more resilient economy. Programs that actually put America first, that create jobs, that move us toward energy independence. Let's talk about one of those programs, the Department of Energy Loans Programs Office, the LPO. This is a smart strategic investment in American workers, American innovation, and American energy. Since its founding, the LPO has supported over $38 billion in loans. It helped create more than 70,000 jobs and backed transformative projects like Tesla's first electric vehicle factory and Ford's advanced battery facilities. These are jobs that stay in America. These are technologies that keep us competitive on the global stage. In my district, in the Imperial County, the LPO is playing a key role in turning the region into Lithium Valley. This region sits atop of the 5th largest known lithium reserve in the world, and the LPO is helping unlock that potential, not with fossil fuels or pollution, but with cutting-edge clean energy technologies. This is about more than just the economy in my district. It's about national security. It's about positioning the U.S. as a global leader in the battery supply chain, ensuring the batteries that power our electrical vehicles and store our renewable energy are made right here at home. We are reducing our dependence on foreign adversaries like China. We are building the infrastructure for the clean energy economy of the future, and we're doing it with American workers, American resources, and American ingenuity. That's what America first should mean. But instead of doubling down on programs like the LPO, Republicans are trying to defund them. And if they succeed, we risk losing over $80 billion in pending clean energy projects across the country. These are projects that create jobs, that stabilize our energy grid, that reduce costs in the long term, that help rural communities like those in Imperial County work to build a clean energy economy with dignity and opportunity. Let's be clear, cutting this funding doesn't just stop progress, it sends a message that we're stepping back, that we're ceding leadership to others like China. And that's not something I'm willing to accept for my district, for California, or for this country. So I strongly support Mr. Auchincloss's amendment because we need transparency, we need consistency, We need economic policies that work for American families, not against them. Let's stop playing the political games with tariffs that are hurting people. Let's invest in our future, in clean energy and innovation, in job creation. Let's make Lithium Valley the beating heart of America's energy future and ensure that promises we make to our constituents are promises we keep. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. If there is no further discussion, the vote occurs on the amendment. The ranking member requests a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Latta. No. Mr. Latta votes no. Mr. Griffith. Mr. Griffith votes no. Mr. Bilirakis. Mr. Bilirakis votes no. Mr. Hudson. Mr. Hudson votes no. Mr. Carter of Georgia. Mr. Carter of Georgia votes no. Mr. Palmer. Mr. Dunn. Mr. Dunn votes no. Mr. Palmer votes no. Mr. Crenshaw. Mr. Crenshaw votes no. Mr. Joyce. Mr. Joyce votes no. Mr. Weber. Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen votes no. Mr. Balderson. Mr. Balderson votes no. Mr. Fulcher. Mr. Fulcher votes no. Mr. Pfluger. Mr. Pfluger votes no. Mrs. Harshbarger. Mrs. Harshbarger. Mrs. Harshbarger votes no. Mrs. Miller Meeks. Mrs. Kamick. Mrs. Kamick votes no. Mr. Obernolte. Mr. Obernolte votes no. Mr. James. Mr. James votes no. Mr. Benz. Mr. Benz votes no. Mrs. Houchin. Mrs. Houchin votes no. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes no. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes no. Mr. Kane. Mr. Rulli. Mr. Rulli votes no. Mr. Evans. Mr. Evans votes no. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman votes no. Mrs. Fedorchak. Mrs. Fedorchak votes no. Mr. Pallone. Mr. Pallone votes aye. Ms. DeGette. Ms. DeGette votes aye. Ms. Schakowsky. Ms. Schakowsky votes aye. Ms. Matsui. Ms. Matsui votes aye. Ms. Castor. Ms. Castor votes aye. Mr. Tonko.
Aye.
Mr. Tonko votes aye. Ms. Clark. Ms. Clark votes aye. Mr. Ruiz. Mr. Ruiz votes aye. Mr. Peters. Mr. Peters votes aye. Mrs. Dingle. Mrs. Dingle votes aye. Mr. Veazey. Mr. Veazey votes aye. Ms. Kelly. Ms. Kelly votes aye. Ms. Badagan. Ms. Badagan votes aye. Mr. Soto. Mr. Soto votes aye. Ms. Schreier. Ms. Schreier votes aye. Ms. Trahan. Ms. Trahan votes aye. Ms. Fletcher. Ms. Fletcher votes aye. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes aye. Mr. Auchincloss. Mr. Auchincloss votes aye. Mr. Carter of Louisiana. Mr. Carter of Louisiana votes aye. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Menendez votes aye. Mr. Mullen. Mr. Mullen votes aye. Mr. Landsman. Mr. Landsman votes aye. Ms. McClellan. Ms. McClellan votes aye. Chairman Guthrie. Chairman Guthrie votes no.
Is Mr. Weber recorded?
Mr. Weber is not recorded.
How is
Mr.
Dr.
Weber
Miller
votes
Meeks
no.
recorded?
Dr. Miller Meeks is not recorded. Ms. Miller Meeks votes no.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be recognized to vote? The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, on that vote, there were 24 ayes and 29 noes.
The noes have it. The motion is not agreed to. Are there any other amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk. ENVGN 3. Sorry.
Would the
next
gentleman
title.
repeat
I
that?
apologize. Next title. I apologize.
You can go to this type.
I move that the committee do now approve and agree to transmit to the House Committee on the Budget, Subtitle A, Budget Reconciliation, Legislative Recommendations Relating to Energy. A roll call vote has been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
We are wrapping up energy.
Mr. Latta.
It is about 6:07
Mr. Latta votes aye.
p.m.
Mr. Griffith. Mr. Griffith votes aye. Mr. Bilirakis. Mr. Bilirakis votes aye. Mr. Hudson. Mr. Hudson votes aye. Mr. Carter of Georgia.
It's about 6:07 p.m. This will be done
Mr. Palmer.
within the next few minutes. So
Mr.
this
Dunn.
ostensibly started around
Mr.
2
Dunn
p.m.
votes aye.
It took
Mr.
4
Crenshaw.
hours to get done with subtitle A.
Mr. Crenshaw votes
Next
aye.
is subtitle B, and then
Mr.
subtitle
Joyce?
C,
Aye.
and then finally
Mr.
subtitle
Joyce
D,
votes
healthcare.
aye. Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber votes aye. Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen votes aye. Mr. Balderson. Mr. Balderson votes aye. Mr. Fulcher. Mr. Fulcher votes aye. Mr. Pfluger. Mr. Pfluger votes aye. Mrs. Harshbarger. Mrs. Miller Meeks. Ms. Miller Meeks votes aye. Mrs. Kamick. Mrs. Kamick votes aye. Mr. Obernolte. Mr. Obernolte votes aye. Mr. James. Mr. James votes aye. Mr. Bentz. Mr. Bentz votes aye. Mrs. Houchin. Mrs. Houchin votes aye. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes aye. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes aye. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy votes aye. Mr. Kane. Mr. Rulli. Mr. Rulli votes aye. Mr. Evans. Mr. Evans votes aye. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman votes aye. Mrs. Fedorchak. Mrs. Fedorchak votes aye. Mr. Pallone. Mr. Pallone votes no. Ms. DeGette. Ms. DeGette votes no. Ms. Schakowsky. Ms. Schakowsky votes no. Ms. Matsui. Ms. Matsui votes no. Ms. Castor. Ms. Castor votes no. Mr. Tonko.
No.
Mr. Tonko votes no. Ms. Clark. Ms. Clark votes no. Mr. Ruiz. Mr. Ruiz votes no. Mr. Peters. Mr. Peters votes no. Mrs. Dingle. Mrs. Dingle votes no. Mr. Veazey. Mr. Veazey votes no. Ms. Kelly. Ms. Kelly votes no. Ms. Barragan. Ms. Barragan votes no. Mr. Soto. Mr. Soto votes no. Ms. Schreier. Ms. Schreier votes no. Ms. Trahan. Ms. Trahan votes no. Ms. Fletcher. Ms. Fletcher votes no. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez votes no. Mr. Auchincloss. Mr. Auchincloss votes no. Mr. Carter of Louisiana.
No.
Mr. Carter of Louisiana votes no. Mr. Menendez.
Nope.
Mr. Menendez votes no. Mr. Mullen. No. Mr. Mullen votes no. Mr. Landsman? Mr. Landsman votes no. Ms. McClellan? Ms. McClellan votes no. Chairman Guthrie? Chairman Guthrie votes aye.
How is Mr. Carter of Georgia recorded?
Mr. Carter of Georgia is not recorded. Mr. Carter of Georgia votes aye.
How is Mr. Palmer recorded?
Mr. Palmer is not recorded. Mr. Palmer votes aye.
How is Dr. Harshbarger recorded?
Mrs. Harshbarger is not recorded. Mrs. Harshbarger votes aye.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be recognized to vote? The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, on that vote, there were 29 ayes and 24 noes.
The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The chair calls up Committee Print Subtitle B, Environment, and asks the clerk to report.
It is 6:12 p.m. and we are now on Subtitle B. Reminder, healthcare is Subtitle D. Subtitle B is relative to the environment.
Title 4, Energy and Commerce. Subtitle B, Environment.
Without objection, the reading of the committee print is dispensed with, and the committee print will be open for amendment at any point so ordered. Is there discussion or amendments to Subtitle B? For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, to strike the last word on the subtitle.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Subtitle B is a radical proposal that would gut critical environmental protections and programs harming the health and welfare of all Americans. This print seeks to both repeal and rescind unobligated funds for every Environmental Protection Agency program included in the Inflation Reduction Act. Republicans also propose to repeal clean vehicle standards finalized by EPA and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, jeopardizing air quality and domestic manufacturing, giving a leg up to the fossil fuel industry. And none of this is a surprise to anybody. The bill continues the Republican political obsession with dismantling the Inflation Reduction Act. And since the law was enacted, they have targeted these climate, clean energy, and public health programs with countless sham hearings and so-called oversight activities. And they've tried to repeal, reprogram, and claw back these funds in the bill after bill, I should say, considered by the House. What's striking is that most, if not all, of the IRA funds have already been invested in communities across the country, both red and blue states, and they're working. So today, they're now attempting to undermine landmark programs that hold polluters accountable as well. And programs like the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the Environmental Justice Block Grants, the Methane Emissions and Waste Reduction Incentive Program, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants, the Clean Ports Program, the Clean Heavy-Duty Vehicles, including school buses. All of these now are being undermined by this committee print Section B. And when Congress passed the IRA, we made a critical and historic down payment toward a stable climate and shared economic opportunity powered by American-made clean energy because we wanted to create a clean future for all. But this bill proposes to throw that all away by eliminating the environmental protections that keep families and communities safe while doing absolutely nothing to lower energy costs. The same, I'll repeat this all night, Mr. Chairman. The fact of the matter is that Republicans promised, President Trump promised that on day one, he was going to reduce prices, make things more affordable, and there's nothing in here, everything that they do in this print and the rest of the prints tonight and the rest of the section tonight simply makes things more expensive, not more affordable. And all this is in the service of providing tax breaks for billionaires, for large corporate interests. That's why they're doing it, and I think it's outrageous. And so I urge my colleagues to oppose this section as well, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on the underlying bill? Mr. Tonka is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to strike the last word.
So recognized.
Thank you. I was proud to serve as the Environment Subcommittee Chair when the historic investments being targeted today were enacted into law. They were an important down payment to reduce pollution while helping us usher in America's next great manufacturing renaissance. So I read the chairman's Wall Street Journal op-ed with great interest. And regarding the energy and environment subtitles, he suggested that This proposal is targeting the most reckless parts of the Inflation Reduction Act, and that it is ending an agenda that, quote, favors wokeness over sensible policy. Well, with all due respect, this is complete nonsense. And when the American people hear about the specific funding being cut, they will agree. So maybe someone from the majority can explain which of these programs are reckless and too woke. Is it the $12 million in unobligated funds to reduce air pollution in schools? You don't need to be a climate activist crony, to use the chairman's phrase, to want to send your children to a safe and yet healthy learning environment. How about DOE money to train contractors that retrofit people's homes? Do only radical
It's worth pointing out
environmentalists
that
want
that
people coming
money
into
for
their homes
schools
to
would
work on electric wiring,
reduce the
be
infectious
properly
disease
trained?
burden inside of
course
those
not.
schools.
What about money to upgrade our ports with the latest and greatest technologies? Now we all know that thanks to President Trump's tariffs, there's a lot less activity at our ports these days. But looking long term, I know many members of this committee want to see their local ports modernized and the people that live near those ports to have less exposure to harmful air pollution. The majority is scrounging around to save $3 million for the implementation of the AIM Act, which was signed into law by President Trump with strong support from American manufacturers. $3 million is a small price to pay to make certain that American companies lead the world in next-generation refrigerant technologies, and Chinese companies aren't able to illegally dump their highly polluting products into the U.S. These are just a few examples. There are plenty more common-sense investments being targeted today that are creating American jobs and deploying new technologies that will indeed reduce pollution. And when you start to list them out, you can really see how ridiculous this proposal is. So the question becomes, if this subtitle results in the rescission of funds to reduce air pollution at schools and the other things I mentioned, why on earth would the Republicans be doing it? Well, for one, we know that these funds will be used to partially offset yet another round of tax cuts, the benefits of which will overwhelmingly go to the wealthiest. We also know the energy subtitle includes unconscionable giveaways to the fossil fuel industry that will allow them to build whatever they want, wherever they want, regardless of how many state governments have concerns, how many landowners may lose their properties, or how much environmental damage might be caused. These provisions don't exist in a vacuum. President Trump is doing everything possible to stop federal scientific efforts to further our understanding of climate change and its consequences. But burying our heads in the sand will not change the basic facts that our changing climate is already having tremendous impacts to our national security, our economy, our property values, our insurance rates, and so much more that is resulting in increasing costs for everyday Americans. History will judge us for having known so much and having done so little to mitigate the worst consequences of climate change. And future generations will save their harshest judgments for those who have actively sought to take us backwards. All so that fossil fuel executives continue to reap major profits and billionaires, yep, get their tax cuts. Let's reject these cuts, which will result in more air pollution and public health harms at a time when Republicans are simultaneously causing nearly 14 million Americans, many of the most vulnerable Americans, to lose their health insurance. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, in our Environment Subcommittee, I have often said that air pollution is harming many communities. In fact, the science has shown that individuals who live in high air polluted communities live on average 10 years less than individuals who do not live in air polluted communities. Children in communities that suffer from high air pollution have higher rates of asthma. Seniors have higher rates of emergency department visits due to COPD and emphysema exacerbations due to poor air quality in their communities. And all along, we've been hearing their altruism about protecting children and seniors from these horrendous Medicaid cuts. And this is one example about how those exact same populations are going to get hurt by this bill. For example, cutting federal funding for clean air in schools will put even more children at risks. Cutting funding for air monitors will prevent school districts and others from adjusting their schedules to protect children. The science is clear. Students exposed to air pollution perform worse on tests and have lower attendance. Clean air is not just a health issue, it's an education issue and an equity issue. I have treated children in our communities struggling to breathe, missing school, and ending up in the emergency department just because of the air that they breathe every day. Programs like CalShape were making real progress, upgrading outdated ventilation systems, filtering out dust and pesticides, and giving our kids a fair shot at a healthy education. These are the programs we should be funding, not cutting. We have a duty to stand up for these children. Cutting air quality investments at schools hurts their health, their education, and their future. And we must protect and expand this funding, not eliminate it. Every child deserves to breathe clean air at school. But in Imperial County, where I represent, and the Coachella Valley, where I represent and I grew up, our students are learning in some of the most polluted air in the country. In Imperial County, over 20% of children suffer from asthma, the highest rate of childhood asthma in the state of California, more than double the national average. In some schools in the Coachella Valley, that number is as high as 1 in 4 children. My district has some of the highest asthma-related hospitalization rates in the entire state. But yet, you want to rescind these fundings. You care about children, but you want to take away the fundings to help them breathe clean air. You want to take care of children, but you're causing an exacerbation of asthma in their childhood. You're ruining their ability to learn in school by taking away the programs and the fundings for them to have their air monitors and create good practices around the area to protect them from air pollution. So I support the amendment, and I urge all my colleagues, for the sake of the children in schools and their ability to learn in a healthy environment, to support that amendment as well, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to offer an amendment, but I want to just say that what this bill does is creating total chaos for the auto industry in repealing EPA's emission standards for light and medium-duty vehicles and NHTSA's corporate average fuel economy standards. What the domestic auto industry needs now, more than anything, is certainty. My priority is to protect American jobs, maintain our competitive edge in automotive manufacturing, and ensure the United States leads in technology and innovation, and that we succeed our leadership to nobody. Our policies must reflect the realities on the ground, prioritize consumer choice, and offer a practical, ambitious path forward. We need harmonized emissions and fuel economy standards, and we must preserve the Inflation Reduction's the IRA's tax incentives to remain globally competitive. People can't afford vehicles these days. It's an issue. A sustainable and unified regulatory approach is crucial for supporting innovation and long-term competitiveness in a global marketplace. And we need to be the leaders in the global marketplace. To remain competitive, the U.S. must align with the global shift towards hybrids, electric vehicles, and down the road, who knows what other technology. Here's a fact. The global marketplace wants EVs, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let China beat us in that market. And if we're going to lead, we got to produce them here. At the same time, our policies must meet the needs of American consumers and workers, ensuring that the transition to cleaner vehicles supports U.S. jobs and domestic manufacturing. And we're competing with China that subsidizes its manufacturing, manipulates its currency, and uses slave labor. We need to bring all stakeholders to, they want to put us out of business and then take over. Well, we cannot let them do it. And it's our job as policymakers to support our domestic industry. We need to bring all the stakeholders to the table and find consensus on how to support a strong, stable auto industry that keeps the U.S. at the forefront of mobility, innovation, and advanced manufacturing, which, by the way, you also took that out, just for the record. The administration should be working with labor, manufacturers, suppliers, dealers, environmental groups, and consumers to create achievable rules that support a range of technologies. Going to remind everybody, I know some of you are young, some of us are a little more seasoned. In the 70s, this industry lost a decade of competitiveness to Japan because we weren't ready with the small car market when gas prices went up. We need to innovate, adapt, and build vehicles competitively here at home. The global marketplace demands EVs and hybrids, and stakeholders need certainty that federal regulations will remain consistent as we transition to cleaner vehicles. And my colleague talked about the asthma in California. The auto industry has become a ping pong ball for everybody, and it's not fair. To remain leaders in global auto manufacturing, we need clear and consistent government policies, policies that provide certainty, not chaos and uncertainty. This means investing in advanced manufacturing, securing domestic battery supply chains, and protecting the historic EV investments under the IRA. Repealing these standards just creates utter and total confusion. The future of the auto industry must be shaped in America and driven by American workers. I'm committed to working with everybody to make this happen, but this is not the way to do it in this bill, and I urge my colleagues to oppose repealing EPA's emission standards and NHTSA's CAFE standards. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. The chair recognizes the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say we have a special Senate guest. I have to be careful because I have my senator here, but the fact that she served for many years on this committee makes her very special, more than the other senators. And that's, of course, Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester. Thank you for being here. And of course, she's concerned about Medicaid. That's why she's here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any amendments being offered to Subtitle B? Chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana.
Chairman, Amendment EVGN 3.
The clerk will report the amendment.
ENV.
Could you please repeat that amendment?
Yes. Amendment ENV GN 3.
Amendment offered by Mr. Carter of Louisiana. Page 8, line 1, strike, repeal, and...
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes to speak in support of his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For more than 50 years, the Environmental Protection Agency has provided grants that both protect our constituents' public health and enhance their environment. This is especially true for the Environmental Climate Justice Block Grant Program, which provides valuable funding that serves community centers, environmental rehabilitation projects, and public health revitalization initiatives that simply wouldn't be possible otherwise. These projects are providing environmental and public health benefits in Democratic and Republican districts alike. However, in this bill, Republicans ruthlessly claw back these grants and eliminate this program. For example, in my dear friend, representative who has a name just like mine, in a district in Georgia, the city of Savannah has taken years to develop the 100% Savannah Initiative, a collaborative between the city government and community members to improve public health, increase economic opportunities, and ensure access to critical HVAC services for low-income residents. This initiative is in direct response to the devastating impacts of natural disasters such as hurricanes, flooding, and extreme heat. The city of Savannah sought federal assistance and received an environmental justice grant from the EPA to provide affordable and accessible HVAC services to make sure community members would have AC on those 90-plus degree summer days that we often have in the South. This grant would have also provided critical workforce training to increase the local supply of electricians and skilled workers to uplift Savannah's economy. But Republicans are trying to get rid of this program entirely. Let me be clear. Residents in Savannah may die from dangerous heat waves without access to critical HVAC systems. All so Republicans give tax-rich people big, big, big tax breaks. We can't afford this. This is nothing new. Republicans have been attacking these grants in messaging bills, oversight hearings, and harassing letters to grant recipients for years with false claims of fraud. They're chomping at the bit to steal the funds from poor communities to line the pockets of big money donors. They're stealing people's health care while making people sicker. So my amendment will simply ensure environmental and climate justice block grants projects that improve health outcomes in low-income communities do not lose critical funding under this bill. If Republicans can truly prioritize their constituents, they should easily agree with me that this funding is valuable and must be protected. I urge my colleagues to support their constituents and support this amendment, as we know this has been very helpful to my colleague in Georgia who bears my name, Carter, Buddy. This has been good. Let's keep it. I yield.
The gentleman yields. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You know, the problem with all these amendments is we get into big fights over the language. The gentleman's amendment says that the unobligated amounts rescinded under Section A may not include amounts awarded to eligible entity for a grant used for protecting public health, improving health outcomes, or reducing the overall health impacts of environmental stressors for low-income households. The problem is that a lot of these things are used in areas where you look at one measure and you say, well, that helps the public health outcome, but you look at another measure, like when they shut down the coal industry in large measure, not completely, but in large measure in my district, public health outcomes got worse because people had less money. And the number one factor for determining health outcomes is whether or not folks have income. When they don't have income, their public health suffers. So I don't know how you would ever determine.
The solution to that is giving those workers money and jobs that don't kill other people. Coal is incredibly bad for children. Public health data on that is very clear.
They would argue was for public health, which put a lot of my people out of work. And when I also raised the issue that it would raise the cost of electricity in my region, which at one time in my lifetime was the third lowest in the country and now is extremely high, the answer was, well, we have programs to take care of those people who can't afford the electricity. But that affected health. They couldn't argue it didn't affect health, but they didn't include that in their analysis when they passed those regulations. So I think we could get into arguments about this that would last all night. Wait, we're probably going to do that anyway. But notwithstanding that, I would hope that the folks on the committee would vote this amendment down. I understand the gentleman is offering it with good intentions, but what we're trying to do is to make sure that our policies go forward that make sense. And I'm not sure a lot of these programs do that, and I'm sure that the gentleman, and we won't get into it now, but the gentleman from Alabama would be happy to talk about some of the things that he's uncovering on the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee. And with that, asking everybody to vote no, I yield back.
The committee will stand in recess until 15 minutes after the last votes on the floor.
All right, we have floor votes on the floor of the full House of Representatives. I don't know how long those are going to take. The committee is in recess until after those votes, plus 15 minutes. we are continuing to wait for the House of Representatives to finish their floor votes. That is what is currently happening. We are waiting for the House of Representatives to finish their floor votes.
Wherefore, Donald John Trump, by such conduct, has demonstrated that he is unfit to govern a nation by and for the people, has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-governance and the rule of law, and will remain a threat to the Constitution if allowed to remain in office. Article 3, abuse of trade powers and international aggression.
We are in another vote of the full house. If I recall correctly, it's on renaming a postal facility. Congress takes a lot of votes on naming postal facilities because there are a lot of postal facilities and they're named, they're federal facilities, so they're named by the feds. Congress reserves to themselves the right to name postal facilities. I am still trying to wrap my head around rescinding funding, cutting funding, deleting funding for indoor air quality in schools so that our children, including our medically complex and disabled children, children with chronic illnesses like asthma, can breathe easier, and immunocompromised children are at less risk from COVID and the flu and RSV and colds. I'm at a loss for words, to be honest.
There's no cost. It's all made up foolishness. And so we're certainly going to look into that. And litigation will be evaluated strongly. But moving forward, I think what's clear is that perhaps the executive branch should be removed from the process. Once a librarian of Congress has been designated,
That is a good idea.
you're going to have an out-of-control executive who's going to abuse the authority.
All right, we're back to the floor votes on the House floor. So right now they are taking floor votes. Everyone comes in person to vote on the floor of the House of Representatives. They have a little card that they put into a reader and they hit a vote button. Yes, no, present, basically abstain. And they bunch all of the votes together. So they're back to back to back to back. That's a very common thing that happens on the floor of the House. And we are in a sequence of those votes right now. And I'm just waiting to see if we're going to be in another vote on the House floor, or if this sequence, this series of House floor votes is done, and we'll be going back to committee work.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches.
Okay, we're done with floor votes. We are done with this series of floor votes. And we'll be going back to the committee in about, my guess is 10 minutes. We are currently waiting for House committees, the Energy and Commerce Committee, to return to the committee hearing room from the floor vote on the House floor. They said they would resume 15 minutes after the conclusion of the last vote.